The glass was already tilting when Daniel Brooks crossed the ballroom in 6 long strides and clamped his hand around the stranger's wrist hard enough that the little white pill dropped and skittered across the marble. "Take your hand off her." Behind him, the most powerful woman in Chicago was slumped over a hotel bar too far gone to know she'd nearly been walked out a service door by a man she'd shaken hands with an hour earlier. Daniel was nobody, a single father in a rented suit, and the woman he'd just saved could end him with one phone call. What he didn't know was that by sunrise, she'd be wearing his sweatshirt, holding onto his hand like a rope, and whispering 4 words that would tear both their lives wide open. Before we go any further, do me a favor. Drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled tonight. And if you believe a good man's small decision can change everything, hit subscribe and stay with me to the end. This one earns it. Daniel Brooks had a rule about the 23rd floor: don't go up there unless somebody asks you to. He'd worked at Carter Meridian for 6 years, and he'd been up to executive level maybe 11 times, and he could tell you what every one of those trips had been about. He knew the elevator dinged half a second late. He knew the carpet up there swallowed sound so completely that people whispered without meaning to. He knew that the coffee was better, and nobody drank it. That Friday, though, the 23rd floor came down to him. It was 6:40 in the evening, and the 8th floor was empty, except for the hum of the servers and the vacuum somebody had left plugged in by the copy room. Daniel was at his desk with his tie loosened, rebuilding a deck for the Sterling Foods launch, because the version that had gone out at 4 o'clock had a spelling error on slide 9, and nobody else had caught it, and nobody else was going to fix it. Ray Delgado stuck his head over the cubicle wall. Ray was 58, twice divorced, and the only person in the building who still kept a pack of cigarettes in his desk drawer out of pure principle. "You know the party started 20 minutes ago." "I know." "You know there's free steak." Daniel didn't look up. "There's a typo on 9. "There's a typo on 9, Ray repeated like he was translating it into a language he could understand. "Daniel, we closed the biggest account in the history of this company today. Sterling Foods, $40 million over 3 years. There is a woman down at the Ellsworth Hotel handing out champagne like it's Halloween candy, and you are sitting here in the dark hunting for a missing letter." "It says pubic relations." Ray was quiet for a second. "Okay," he said. "Fix it." "That's what I'm doing." "Fix it fast." Ray thumped the cubicle wall with the flat of his hand. "And then come eat a steak. You've earned a steak whether or not you think you have, which knowing you, you don't." Daniel finally looked up. He was 35 years old, and he had the kind of face that people trusted immediately and then forgot about. 10 minutes later, brown hair, he cut himself a jaw that hadn't seen a razor since Wednesday, eyes that were tired in a permanent way that sleep didn't touch. "I've got Marcus." "You've got Mrs. Alvarez is what you've got, and she already told me she's keeping him till 10 because she's watching her show and he does the voices." Daniel almost smiled. "He does do the voices. Kid's got range. Now hurry up." So that was how Daniel Brooks ended up at the Ellsworth Hotel that night. Not because he wanted to be there, because Ray Delgado wouldn't let it go, and because slide 9 took 11 minutes, and because somewhere in the back of his head, a place he did not visit often and did not admit to, there was the fact that Evelyn Carter would be there. He'd never said her name out loud in a sentence that wasn't about work, not once. Not to Ray, not to his sister, not to the guy who cut his hair. It was a discipline he practiced the way other men practiced sobriety. He'd first noticed her 4 years earlier, and not the way most people noticed her. Most people noticed the obvious things. Evelyn Carter was 41 and looked 35 and moved through a room like the room had been built for her. She'd started Carter Meridian in a rented office above a shoe repair shop with 2 employees and a laptop, and now there were 240 people on payroll and a floor with carpet that ate sound. She could sit across from a Fortune 500 board and talk for 40 minutes without notes and walk out with a signature. Business magazines put her on lists. Younger women in the office studied the way she held a pen. What Daniel noticed was different. He noticed that she was still there at 9 o'clock, every night. Not sometimes, every night. He noticed that on the rare occasions the whole company got an email at 2 a.m. It came from her. He noticed that in 6 years, he had never once heard her mention a husband, a boyfriend, a sister, a dog, a vacation, or a Sunday. He noticed that she knew things about people. When Ray's brother had the heart attack, an envelope showed up on Ray's desk with a handwritten card and no name on it, and Ray had cried in the stairwell like a kid. When Denise in accounting had her second baby, the flowers came from the company, but the note in them said, "Take the full 12 weeks, not 8, 12. I'm watching." And when Daniel's divorce went through and he came back after 2 days off with his face gray, there'd been a voicemail waiting on his desk phone. "Brooks, Carter, I'm reassigning the Kellerman account for 6 weeks. Don't argue with me about it, it's already done. And Brooks, the first year is the worst one. It gets easier after that. Not good, easier." 19 seconds. He'd saved it for 4 months before he made himself delete it. That was the thing nobody else seemed to see about Evelyn Carter. She remembered every single person's worst week. She just never ever mentioned her own. The Ellsworth ballroom was loud and gold and full. Somebody had spent money on this. There was an ice sculpture shaped like the Sterling Foods logo, which struck Daniel as roughly as dignified as a snowman in a suit, and a live 4-piece band playing songs that were popular when Daniel was in high school and now apparently counted as classics. He got there at 7:25, which meant he'd missed the speeches, which he considered a mercy. Ray found him near the back with a plate. "There he is. Slide 9 is saved. History will remember. Where's the steak?" "Gone. There's chicken." "There's always chicken." "That's what my second wife said." Ray steered him sideways. "Come on, she's about to do the thing." The thing was Evelyn Carter climbing 2 steps onto a low platform with a microphone in her hand, in a dark blue dress with her hair pinned back, and the whole room going quiet without being asked. Daniel had seen her do this before. It never stopped being a little bit remarkable. 200 people who had been drinking for 2 hours, and the sound just drained out of the room like a plug had been pulled. "I'm going to keep this short," she said, "because I've watched all of you look at that dessert table for 40 minutes and I'm not a cruel woman." Laughter. Real laughter, not the polite kind. "6 years ago, I sat in a conference room and pitched Sterling Foods, and they told me, and I'm quoting exactly, 'We like you, but you're too small.'" She let that sit. "I want you to understand something. They didn't say we weren't good. They said we weren't big. That's not a criticism of the work. That's a criticism of the odds." Somebody whistled. She held up a hand. "So we got big, not by cutting corners, not by cutting people, by showing up, by fixing typos on slide 9 at 6:40 on a Friday when nobody's watching." Daniel's fork stopped moving. "Because somebody in this room did exactly that today, and I know it, and if I said his name, he'd walk into the lake." The room laughed again. Ray elbowed Daniel so hard he nearly dropped his plate. $40 million, Evelyn said, and her voice changed, just slightly dropped, roughened. "That's the number everybody's going to print. Here's the number that matters to me, 240. That's how many people in this company go to bed tonight knowing where their next paycheck is coming from. That's what this actually is. Everything else is just noise." She raised her glass. "Thank you, every one of you. Go eat the dessert." The room came apart in applause, and Daniel stood there with a plate of cold chicken clapping, feeling something in his chest that he had absolutely no business feeling. He watched over the next hour without meaning to. He watched her get handed off from group to group. He watched her laugh at the same joke 4 times with 4 different sets of people, and each time she made it look like the first. He watched a regional director corner her for 11 minutes about a staffing budget at his own company's victory party. He watched 3 separate men lean in closer than they needed to. He watched her never once take a drink from her glass. She'd lift it. She'd touch it to her lips. She'd set it down. And then around 9:15, the crowd thinned. The band packed up the ice sculpture logo, lost its left half to gravity, and something in Evelyn Carter went out like a switch. He saw the exact moment. She was standing near the doors saying goodnight to the last cluster of VPs, and she was smiling. And then the elevator took them, and the smile came off her face like she'd set down something heavy. She walked into the hotel bar alone. Daniel should have gone home. I knew it then, and he knew it later, and he would think about it for the rest of his life. He had his coat over his arm. Mrs. Alvarez's show ended at 10. He had a kid asleep on a neighbor's couch with a baseball glove under his arm because he refused to sleep without it since the season started. Instead, he went to the bar to get a glass of water before the drive, and he sat 2 stools down from the most powerful woman he'd ever met, and he did not say a word to her. She noticed him anyway. She noticed everything. "Brooks. Miss Carter. Slide 9. He kept his eyes on the bar. It was a bad typo. It was a catastrophic typo. She turned her glass in a slow circle on the wood. I read it on my phone at 5:52 and I laughed so hard I had to close my office door. And then I thought somebody's going to catch that. And I sat there for 45 minutes waiting to see who. She looked at him. You. Every time. It's always you. Somebody's got to read the deck. Nobody has to read the deck. That's the point. Everybody assumes somebody else read the deck. She drank. It was he noticed, not her first, not her third either. You know what my whole job is? My entire job, 23 floors of it, standing in a room full of assumptions and being the only person who checks. That sounds exhausting. She laughed a short one more air than sound. Don't do that. Do what? Be perceptive at me. I'm not braced for it. The bartender young guy name tag said. Tommy refilled her glass without being asked, and Daniel watched him do it and felt something small and cold turn over in his stomach. Big night, Daniel said. Biggest night. She lifted the glass. 6 years I chased Sterling. 6 years. Do you know what I gave up for 6 years? No, ma'am. Neither do I. That's the funny part. I can't itemize it. I just know the account is closed and I've got nothing to spend the money on. She turned toward him, and her eyes were glassy, but her voice was still perfectly, terrifyingly clear. My mother died 3 years ago tonight. Did you know that? Daniel set down his water. No, he said quietly. I didn't. Nobody does. It's not in the calendar. I don't put it in the calendar. She smiled at nothing. She never understood what I did for a living, not once, 20 years. She'd tell her friends I worked in advertisement singular, like there was just the one and I was in charge of it. Her voice cracked in the middle of the word one, and she covered it by drinking. I was in Dallas when it happened. I was in a pitch meeting in Dallas, and my phone was face down on the table because I don't let phones interrupt a pitch. That's a rule, that's my rule. Ms. Carter. I won the account, she said. I want you to know that. I won the Dallas account. I got in the car, and I drove to the airport, and I won an account that day. Daniel didn't say anything. There was nothing to say to that, and he had enough sense to know it. Anyway, she said, and pushed her hair back, and her hand wasn't steady. That's why the champagne, 3 years and $40 million, and here I am at a hotel bar at 9:40 telling my own employee about my mother. Fantastic. Truly. Please forget every word. I won't repeat it. That's not what I said. I know, Daniel said. But that's what I can promise. She looked at him for a long moment, and something in her face flickered surprise maybe, or the beginning of it. And that was when Grant Whitaker sat down on her other side. Daniel knew him by sight. Everybody in the building knew him by sight that week. Whitaker was Sterling Foods' senior vice president of Brand 48, tanned in February, the kind of handsome that gets less convincing the longer you look at it. He'd been in the ballroom earlier, laughing loudly with his hand on people's shoulders. There she is, Whitaker said, the woman of the hour hiding in the dark. Grant! Evelyn straightened up. It was automatic. Daniel watched her do it, watched her pull herself upright by some invisible cable, watched the CEO come back into her spine, even as her eyes struggled to focus. I thought you'd gone. And missed the after-party. Whitaker signaled the bartender with 2 fingers without looking at him. Tommy, 2 more. I'm fine. Nobody's fine, Evelyn. That's why they invented the bar. He put his elbow on the wood and leaned in. Hell of a pitch you gave in March. I've been thinking about it for 4 months. That's kind. I'm not being kind. I don't do kind. He laughed. I told the board I said that woman's a killer. I said she smiled at me the whole time and I didn't even feel the knife go in. That's the job. That's a talent. The drinks arrived. He slid one in front of her. Here, come on, to the deal. Grant, I've had enough. 1. I've had enough. Evelyn. His voice stayed friendly and got half a shade harder. It's 1 drink. I signed a $40 million contract with you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I think I can buy you 1 drink. And Daniel, 2 stools down, invisible and nobody in a rented suit, felt every single hair on his arm stand up, because he'd heard that tone before. He'd heard it in a kitchen when he was 9 years old, coming out of a man who was not his father, but who lived there for a while. It was the tone that came right before things stopped being a conversation. It was the sound of somebody making a request that was not a request. Evelyn picked up the glass, not because she wanted it. Daniel saw her calculate. It saw the CEO run the math in about a second and a half drunk and come out with this man just signed for $40 million and 240 people work for me. She drank it. There she is, Whitaker said. The next 20 minutes were the longest of Daniel's life to that point. He didn't leave. He should have left. He nursed a glass of water that had gone warm, and he stared at the mirror behind the bottles, and he listened. He listened to Whitaker order 2 more. He listened to him tell a story about a golf trip, a story that had no ending and no point, and to Evelyn's laughter getting slower and further behind the punchlines, half a beat, then a full beat, then not arriving at all. He listened to Whitaker say, "You know you're much better company like this," and to Evelyn say something that didn't come out as words. He listened to Whitaker say, "Where are you parked?" and to Evelyn say, "I'm not," and to Whitaker say, "Perfect." And then Daniel watched in the mirror, in the long gold mirror behind the liquor bottles, with a clarity he would never lose for the rest of his life. Grant Whitaker glance, left glance, right. Take something out of his jacket pocket with his thumb and 2 fingers and move his hand toward the glass. Daniel was off the stool before he decided to be. He didn't remember crossing the space. He remembered the sound his own chair made going over. He remembered that his hand closed around Whitaker's wrist, and that the wrist was thicker than he expected, and that he squeezed hard enough to feel tendon, and that a small white tablet dropped out of Whitaker's fingers, bounced once off the bar, and rolled onto the marble floor. "Take your hand off her." The whole bar stopped. There were maybe 9 people in it. All 9 of them turned. Whitaker's face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds, shock, outrage, calculation, and then a smooth, oily innocence that was somehow the most sickening of all. "Get your hands off me. Who the hell are you?" "Daniel Brooks. I work for her." He hadn't let go of the wrist. "Tommy, don't touch that bar. Nobody wipes that bar." The bartender stood frozen with a rag in his hand. Yeah. "You're out of your mind," Whitaker said. "That's an aspirin. Then bend down and pick it up and eat it." Nobody moved. "Bend down," Daniel said, "and pick it up, and eat it, in front of everybody, and I'll apologize on my knees and you can have my job." Whitaker's jaw worked. His eyes flicked to the door, to the mirror, to the little white circle on the marble, and something behind them collapsed and reassembled as fury. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." "Maybe." Daniel let go of him finger by finger. "Get out. You have no idea who I am." "I know exactly who you are." Daniel's voice didn't rise. That was what people talked about afterward. Tommy the bartender told the story for years and always said the same thing. The guy never raised his voice, not once. "I've known who you are since I was 9 years old. Get out." Evelyn had her hand on the bar. She was trying to stand up and she couldn't quite manage it, and she was looking back and forth between the 2 men like a woman surfacing from deep water. "Daniel," she said. It was the first time she had ever used his first name. "It's all right," he said without looking away from Whitaker. "You're all right." Whitaker got off the stool. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Evelyn and he smiled, and the smile was the worst thing in the room. "Congratulations on the account, Evelyn," he said. "Let's see how it holds up." And he walked out through the lobby, unhurried like a man leaving a restaurant he intended to return to. The next 40 minutes were logistics, and Daniel handled them the way he handled everything, quietly in order without asking anybody for permission. He got the hotel's night manager, a compact woman named Yolanda Reyes, who had been doing that job for 19 years and needed exactly 1 sentence to understand the situation. He got the pill into a clean cocktail napkin folded and into a bar glass, and Yolanda put the glass in the hotel safe and wrote the time on a form. "Cameras?" Daniel asked. "3, she said. 2 on the bar, 1 on the lobby door. I'll pull it tonight and I'll hold it. You want the police?" Daniel looked at Evelyn. She was sitting with both hands flat on the bar, breathing carefully, eyes closed. "Ms. Carter," he said gently, "do you want to call the police?" "No." It came out immediately, and it came out like a reflex. "No, no police." "Ma'am." "Do you know what happens?" She opened her eyes. They were red. "Do you know what happens to a woman's CEO in a police report at a hotel bar?" "I do. I've watched it happen to 2 women I know. It doesn't matter what the report says. It matters what the headline says, and the headline says drunk." Her voice broke on it. "It always says drunk." Yolanda Reyes and Daniel Brooks looked at each other over her head. 19 years and 6 years, and neither of them had a good answer. "Then we hold it," Yolanda said. "That's all. We hold the glass and we hold the tape, and if you ever want them, they're here. No expiration date." "Thank you," Daniel said. "Don't thank me. Thank whatever made you look up." She was already walking. "Get her home. Use the west door. There's a valet stand and no lobby." Evelyn Carter could not walk in a straight line, and she was furious about it. "I'm fine." "Yes, ma'am." "I've had 4 drinks. You've had 7, and 2 of them weren't yours." He had her coat over his arm, and he was walking half a step behind and to her left, not touching her, letting her steer. "Stairs coming up, 3 of them." "I can see the stairs." "I know." She took the first one, and her heel went sideways, and Daniel's hand was under her elbow before she'd finished falling. She stood there for a second, holding onto a stranger's forearm in a hotel lobby, and Daniel felt her go absolutely rigid, and then all at once felt the fight go out of her, the way a rope goes slack. "Okay," she said very quietly. "Okay." "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am, not tonight, please." "Okay." He got her into the passenger seat of a 14-year-old Honda Accord with 190,000 miles on it and a crack in the windshield shaped like the state of Florida, and he had to move a booster seat to the back to do it, and he had to sweep an empty juice box and a Little League schedule off the seat and into the door pocket, and he was embarrassed about all of it in a way he decided not to examine. She sat with her head back against the headrest and her eyes closed. "What's your address?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Miss Carter, I need your address. 1240 North Astor, 4th floor." A pause. "Don't take me there." He'd put the car in gear. He put it back in park. "Why not?" "Because there's nobody in it," she said. Daniel sat with both hands on the wheel. "There's nobody in mine either," he said, "except a 9-year-old and a woman named Mrs. Alvarez who's going to want her couch back." Evelyn laughed. It was a wrecked, wet sound, and it turned into something else halfway through, and she pressed the back of her wrist against her mouth to stop it. "I'm going to be sick," she said. "That's fine." "It is not fine. I'm the CEO." "Door handle's right there. Take your time. It's an old car." She was sick twice in a parking garage on Erie Street, and both times Daniel stood 8 feet away with his back turned, holding her coat, watching a concrete pillar, and not her. The second time when she'd finished, she said from somewhere down near the bumper, "You're not watching." "No." "Why not?" "Because you wouldn't want me to." Silence. A long one with echoes in it. "Water," she said. "There's water in the door." I knew there was. He'd put it there. He handed it to her without turning around backward like a relay baton, and she took it, and he heard her drink, and then he heard her sit down on the concrete curb in a $2,000 dress. "Daniel." "Yeah." "Was there really something in the glass?" He turned around then. She was looking up at him from the curb with her makeup gone and her hair falling out of its pins and her shoes in her hand, and she looked about 19 years old. "Yes." "You're sure?" "I watched him take it out of his pocket." She nodded slowly. Then she said, "I'd have drunk it. I'd have drunk it because he signed for $40 million. "I know. I want you to understand I knew he was awful. I knew it in March. I knew it in the meeting. I sat there and I let him put his hand on my back and I laughed because 240 people—" Her voice went. She stopped and started again. "Because 240 people work for me." Daniel crouched down so he wasn't standing over her. It was he'd think later, the only decision he made all night that he made on purpose. "Ms. Carter," he said, "you want to hear something true?" "I don't know." "Then I'll say it fast." He rested his forearms on his knees. "There's a man in accounts named Ray Delgado. His brother had a heart attack in 2019, and somebody put an envelope on his desk with cash in it and no name. He still keeps the card in his wallet. He showed it to me at a Christmas party, and then he had to go outside." She stared at the ground. "There's a woman in HR whose kid has seizures. Somebody moved her to a schedule where she never travels. Somebody made it look like a department reorganization so she wouldn't have to ask. Stop. And 3 years ago, somebody left a 19-second voicemail on my desk phone that got me through a very bad month." He waited until she looked up. "You didn't build that company for $40 million. You built it so you'd have 240 people to take care of. And there's not one of them who wouldn't have grabbed that guy's wrist. I just happened to be the one sitting there." Evelyn Carter put her face in her hands and cried in a parking garage on Erie Street, and Daniel Brooks knelt on the concrete and did not touch her, and did not talk, and did not leave. It was 11:20 when he pulled up in front of his building in Portage Park, 3 flats brick, a porch light with a bulb he kept meaning to replace. Mrs. Alvarez was awake on the first floor with the TV on, and she came to the door in a housecoat and took one look at the situation over Daniel's shoulder and did not ask a single question, which was the finest thing anybody did for him that year. "He's asleep on the couch," she said. "He wanted to wait up. He lost." "Thank you." He brushed his teeth. He says he brushed his teeth. She was still looking past him. "That woman needs a bathroom and a bed, not a conversation." "Yes, ma'am." "And Daniel." She caught his sleeve. "Whoever she is, you're a good boy, but you're an idiot about certain things. Be careful." "It's not like that." "It's never like that," said Mrs. Alvarez, "until it is." He carried Marcus up first, 9 years old and heavy as a sandbag glove still hooked over one arm, the kid making a noise like a complaint and then going right back under. Daniel put him in his bed, took the glove off, put the glove on the pillow next to him because that was the arrangement. Then he went back down for Evelyn Carter, who had fallen asleep in the passenger seat with her forehead against the window. He said her name twice. She didn't wake up. So he carried her. Up 2 flights of stairs in a hallway that smelled like somebody's dinner past a bike chained to a railing with a woman worth $11 million asleep against his shoulder in a blue dress, her shoes in his left hand along with his keys. She woke up halfway up the 2nd flight. "Where? You're okay. 2 more steps. Put me down. There's 2 more steps. Daniel put me down." He put her down. She stood swaying on the landing with one hand flat against the wall, and she looked at the hallway at the bike at the door with the crooked number 3 on it, and then at him. "Whose house is this? Mine." "Why am I at your house?" "Because you told me not to take you to yours," Daniel said, "and because I wasn't going to leave you alone in a hotel tonight, and because I'm not smart enough to think of a third option. If you want, I'll drive you to your sister's or a friend's or back home. You say the word and we go. Right now. I'll wait in the car till you're inside." Evelyn stood in the hallway of a 2-bedroom walk-up in Portage Park, 41 years old. The most successful woman most people in that zip code had ever heard of, and could not name a single door in the city of Chicago she wanted to knock on at 11:40 at night. She didn't cry. Her chin moved once and stopped. "I don't have anybody's address," she said. "Okay. I have 400 contacts in my phone." "Okay. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes," Daniel said. "I understand exactly what you're telling me." He unlocked the door. The apartment was small and clean, and it was not designed to impress anybody, which was, though nobody said it out loud that night, precisely the reason it worked. There were crayon drawings taped up the length of the hallway, a whole gallery going back years, the earliest ones, just orange scribbles with a name spelled backward. There was a bookshelf with paperbacks, so red they'd gone soft. There were 2 baseball bats standing in the corner by the door, like umbrellas, and a coffee can full of loose change on the fridge with a masking tape label that said, "Marcus Catcher's Gear." Evelyn stood in the middle of it and did not move for a long time. "You have a whole life in here," she said. "It's a 2-bedroom. "That's not what I said." Daniel got her a glass of water and 3 ibuprofen and a wastebasket he set beside the couch without comment. He got a spare toothbrush out of the bathroom drawer still in the wrapper, because he bought them in packs of 6 for reasons related to a 9-year-old. And then he handed her a gray sweatshirt folded that said Northwest Little League Coach across the front in cracked white letters. "It's clean," he said. "That dress isn't going to be comfortable." She took it and held it against her chest with both arms like it was something warm, and she looked at him, and something in her face was coming apart in slow motion. "Why are you being like this?" "Like what?" "Careful," she said. "You've had 8 opportunities tonight. I counted. I'm drunk, and I counted." Her voice was rising and cracking at the same time. "Every man I have ever met would have taken one of them. That's not cynicism, that's data, Daniel. That's 20 years of data." "Ms. Carter." "So why?" Daniel leaned back against the kitchen counter and folded his arms and looked at the floor for a second. "Because there's a kid asleep down that hall," he said. "And someday he's going to be a man in a room with somebody who can't stand up. And whatever I do tonight is what he's going to do that night. That's it. That's the whole reason. It's not noble. It's just arithmetic." Evelyn Carter opened her mouth and closed it. "Bathroom's the first door," Daniel said. "I'll be on the chair. If you need anything, say my name. I'm a light sleeper." She came out 10 minutes later in his sweatshirt with her face washed and her hair down, looking so unlike herself that Daniel had to look away and busy his hands with a blanket. She lay down on the couch. He put the blanket over her. He shut off the lamp and got into the armchair across the room with his shoes still on the way he'd slept through the entire first year after the divorce. The radiator ticked. Somebody's car alarm went off 2 streets over and gave up. Daniel. Yeah. Can I ask you something stupid? Sure. Her voice came out of the dark, small and level, and about 10 years younger than her face. Are you a safe person to be tired around? Daniel sat in the dark of his own living room and understood that he had just been asked the most serious question anyone had ever asked him, and that she'd probably been carrying it unasked for 20 years. Yes, he said. There was a long silence. He thought she'd gone under. Then he heard the blanket move and heard her breathing change and heard her whisper not to him exactly more like to the room, the way people talk when the last wall comes down. Stay with me. Daniel didn't answer her. He sat in that armchair with his shoes on and his hands folded across his stomach, and he let the words hang in the dark until her breathing went long and even, and he was sure she was under. Then he sat there some more, because he knew what she meant, and he knew what she didn't mean, and he knew that a drunk woman at midnight and a sober woman at 7 a.m. were two different people, and that only one of them got to make decisions. He'd learned that in a house where nobody had ever learned it. He'd learned it the hard way from the other side watching. So he stayed awake, not out of nobility, out of a low, humming anxiety that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with the fact that a man named Grant Whitaker had looked at Evelyn Carter in front of 9 witnesses and said, "Let's see how it holds up." Around 2 a.m, Daniel got out. The chair went into the kitchen and stood there with his hands on the counter in the dark for a while. Then he took out his phone and typed a note to himself. Tommy Bartender, Yolanda Reyes Night MGR, glass and safe, 3 cameras, 9:52:10:06 approx. He read it twice and added one more line. He didn't panic. He's done it before. Then he went back to the chair. Marcus Brooks woke up at 6:10, the way he woke up every single morning, which was all at once like somebody had thrown a switch. Daniel heard the bedroom door, heard the 8 quick footsteps down the hall, heard them stop dead. He was out of the chair before his eyes were fully open. Marcus stood at the end of the hallway in pajama pants and a Cubs t-shirt, with his hair standing straight up on one side, looking at the couch. "Dad? Hey, bud. There's a lady on the couch." "There is. Is she dead?" "She is not dead." "Okay." Marcus considered this with the seriousness of a 9-year-old who had recently learned that adults will lie to make things easier. "Is she your girlfriend?" "No." "Is she Mrs. Alvarez's daughter?" "No." "Then who is she?" Daniel crouched down so they were eye level, which was a thing he did about 40 times a day and had done since the kid could walk. "She's my boss." Marcus's eyebrows went up so far they nearly left his face. "You have a boss. Everybody has a boss." "Does she have a boss?" "No," Daniel said. "That's kind of the problem." Marcus absorbed that. Then in a stage whisper that could have been heard from the street, "Why is she wearing your coach shirt?" "Because she had a bad night and I gave it to her. And here's the thing." Daniel put a hand on his son's shoulder. "She's a grown-up who had a hard day, and grown-ups get embarrassed about that, which is stupid, but that's how it is. So when she wakes up, you're going to be normal at her. You're not going to ask her 40 questions. "How many questions?" Two. Two good ones." Marcus's jaw set. Daniel watched his son do the exact thing his ex-wife used to do with her mouth when she was negotiating, and felt the small permanent ache that came with that. 4, Marcus said. 3 and you make the coffee." "I don't know how to make coffee." "You know how to push the button." "Deal." Marcus stuck out his hand and shook once hard and went into the kitchen, and Daniel heard the coffee maker and then heard his son start narrating quietly to himself, the way he did when he was excited. "Okay, so we have a boss in the house. That's a first. That's a first for the Brooks residence." And on the couch, without opening her eyes, Evelyn Carter said, "I'm awake." Daniel turned around. She hadn't moved. She was lying exactly where he'd left her, one arm over her face, the blanket up to her ribs, his sweatshirt bunched at the shoulder. "How long?" he asked. "Since is she dead?" "I'm sorry." "Don't." She lowered her arm. Her eyes were open and bloodshot and absolutely clear, which was somehow worse. "Don't apologize for your kid. I need you to not do that." "Okay. How bad is it?" "How bad is what?" "Everything, Daniel." He came around and sat on the coffee table across from her, forearms on his knees. "You want the truth? I want it fast. You had too much to drink at a company party. That's the whole crime. You didn't say anything to anybody you should be ashamed of. You didn't do anything. You didn't get in a car. A guy tried to do something to you and he failed because a bartender named Tommy is slow with a rag, and I was 2 stools down." He paused. "That's it. That's the sum total. You want to know how bad it is? It's not bad. It's Saturday. Evelyn stared at the ceiling. I told you about my mother, she said. You did. I've never told anyone about my mother. I know. You know, I figured it out about 4 seconds after you said it, Daniel said, because of how you said it. She put both hands over her face, not crying, just covering. I have to go home, she said into her palms. Okay. I have to go home and I don't have shoes I can walk in, and I'm in a 9-year-old's living room in a Little League sweatshirt, and my car is in a garage on Whacker, and my phone is at 2%, and there is a child in the kitchen making me coffee. That's true. All of that is true. How are you so calm? I'm not calm, Daniel said. I've been awake since 11:40. She took her hands down and looked at him. Whatever she was going to say next got interrupted because Marcus arrived carrying a mug in both hands with the extreme tongue-out concentration of a man defusing a bomb, and set it on the coffee table beside his father's knee and stepped back. I made coffee, he announced. It's my first time. Evelyn sat up. She did it slowly, and she got the blanket arranged, and she pushed her hair back, and then she looked at the boy, and Daniel watched something happen in her face that he had never seen there in 6 years. Thank you, she said. What's your name? Marcus Brooks. What's yours? Evelyn Carter. That's a lot of name. It is. Are you actually my dad's boss? I am. Do you make a lot of money? Daniel said. Marcus. That's 2, Marcus said. I'm allowed 3. Evelyn picked up the mug. She drank some of it, and Daniel saw her not react at all, which meant it was terrible, which meant she was better at this than he'd expected. Yes, she said. I make a lot of money. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Then he said, Are you sad? The kitchen clock ticked. Marcus, Daniel said quietly, go get dressed. That was my 3rd one. Go get dressed. Wait. Evelyn set the mug down. Wait. He asked me a question. Marcus stood there in his Cubs shirt, with his hair up on one side, and waited the way kids do, without embarrassment, without any of the mercy adults use to let each other off the hook. Yes, Evelyn said. I'm sad. Why? That's 4, Daniel said. It's okay. Evelyn didn't look away from the kid. Because I've been working very hard for a very long time, and yesterday I finished something big, and when I finished it, I found out there wasn't anybody at home to tell. Marcus thought about that. You could tell us, he said. And then he went to get dressed because he was 9, and it was Saturday, and there was a game at 11. Evelyn Carter sat on a couch in Portage Park with a mug of the worst coffee ever brewed by human hands and cried for the 2nd time in 9 hours, and Daniel Brooks got up and went into the kitchen and made noise with the pans so she could do it in private. High Mata pancakes, because that was what he made. He made them badly and in the wrong shapes, and Marcus ate 4 of them, and Evelyn ate 1.5 and drank a glass of water and 2 more ibuprofen. And for about 35 minutes, the 3 of them talked about baseball. It was, Daniel would think later, the strangest and most ordinary breakfast of his life. So you're a coach, Evelyn said. Assistant coach. He's the actual coach, Marcus said with his mouth full. Coach Ted has a bad hip, so he sits in the chair, and Dad does everything. That's not true. Dad, he sits in the chair. Coach Ted has 40 years of experience. In the chair. Evelyn laughed. It surprised her. Daniel watched it surprise her, watched her put her fingers to her mouth like she'd caught something falling. What position? She asked Marcus. Catcher. That's the hard one. Marcus put his fork down. You know positions. I know that one. Catcher's the only guy facing the other way. She turned the water glass in her hand, and something crossed her face. My dad used to say the catcher's the only person on the field who can see the whole game. Everybody else is looking one direction. The catcher's looking back at all of it. Marcus's eyes were enormous. Did your dad play? No. My dad drove a delivery truck for a bakery on the South Side for 31 years. Oh. He watched a lot of baseball, though, Evelyn said. He used to say a bakery truck and a catcher's mitt are basically the same job. You get there before everybody else and you take whatever gets thrown at you. Daniel stood at the sink with a spatula in his hand and did not move. Because in 6 years he had never heard Evelyn Carter mention a father. Not once. Not in an all hands, not in a profile, not in a bio. He'd read the Cranes piece on her twice. It said self-made. It said no safety net. It said absolutely nothing about a bakery truck on the South Side. Marcus, who did not know he was witnessing anything, said, "That's a good saying," and went to find his glove. Evelyn didn't look up from the water glass. Nobody knows that either, she said. I gathered. It's not a secret. It's just... She stopped. You know what happens when you tell a room full of investors that your dad drove a truck? They love it. They love it so much. It becomes the whole story. Suddenly you're not a strategist, you're a nice narrative about bootstraps, and the number they'll invest goes down 11%, because now you're a person instead of a machine. Her jaw tightened. So you stop saying it, and then one day you realize you haven't said his name out loud in 4 years. What was it? She looked up. Frank, she said. Frank Carter. Frank Carter, Daniel said. Bakery truck, 31 years. Why are you repeating it? So there's 2 of us who know it. Evelyn Carter put her hand flat on the table and looked at it for a while. Mrs. Alvarez took Marcus to the field at 10:15 because Mrs. Alvarez had been taking Marcus places since he was 4 and had a folding chair in her trunk and opinions about umpires. She looked Evelyn up and down in the doorway with frank, unhurried assessment, and Evelyn, who had stared down a Sterling Foods board without blinking, actually stood up straighter. You'll want a shower, Mrs. Alvarez said. Towels are in the hall closet, not the bathroom. He never remembers to tell people that. Thank you. She took the kid's hand. Daniel, game's at 11. I'll be there by the 2nd inning. He's catching. I know he's catching. 2nd inning, said Mrs. Alvarez, and left. Evelyn showered. Daniel put her dress in a paper grocery bag because he didn't have anything better, and gave her a flannel shirt and a pair of gym shorts with a drawstring pulled to its absolute limit, and she looked so completely absurd that when she came out of the bathroom, they both stopped and stared at each other, and then laughed until she had to hold the doorframe. I want you to understand, she said, wiping her eyes, that I have been photographed for the cover of a magazine. I've seen it. You've seen it. It was in the lobby for a year and a half, Miss Carter. Everyone's seen it. Don't. She pointed at him. Not today. Today my name is Evelyn. Okay, say it. Evelyn. Good. She picked up the grocery bag with her $2,000 dress in it. Take me home. The drive to North Astor Street took 35 minutes on a Saturday morning, and they talked for all of it. And afterward, Daniel could not have told anyone how it happened. It started with him asking whether she wanted the radio on, and it ended somewhere around Ashland, with Evelyn Carter saying, I was 26 when I started the company, and I did it because a man named Curtis Ballard told me I'd never run anything. Who's Curtis Ballard? My boss at the time. He had a plaque on his desk that said, Humility. He gave a very good speech about mentorship at a conference in Milwaukee. She watched the buildings go by. He kept me off the Prescott pitch for 2 years and then used my deck, word for word. He didn't even change the headline font. What did you do? I resigned in a 2-line email, and I opened an office above a shoe repair place on Belmont with $11,000, which was every dollar I had, and I did not sleep properly for 6 years. She said it flatly. And here's the thing nobody understands. I don't hate Curtis Ballard. I've never hated him. I need him. He's the engine. Every time I'm tired, every time I want to stop, I put his face in my head and I get another 2 hours out of it. That's a hell of a fuel source. It's a very efficient one. It's also going to kill you. She turned her head. Excuse me. I said it's going to kill you. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. You want me to say it nicer? I can't. I've been up all night. You've known me for 14 hours. I've known you for 6 years. You just met me last night. Evelyn opened her mouth and then closed it and turned back to the window, and for 8 blocks, neither of them said anything. Then she said quietly, It's already killing me. I know. I get chest pain. Since March. I've had 2 EKGs and a stress test and a cardiologist named Ruben Ito, who is very kind to me and who told me in April that my heart is in perfect condition and my nervous system is at war with it. She laughed without any humor. He gave me a pamphlet. There's a pamphlet, Daniel. I run a company with a 9-figure valuation, and a man handed me a pamphlet. What did it say? Consider reducing sources of chronic stress. Huh. Yes. Did you consider it? I put it in a drawer, she said, and I closed the drawer, and I went to a meeting. They pulled up on North Astor Street at 10:20 in front of a building with a green awning and a doorman named Alvin, who came out to the curb and looked at the 14-year-old Honda with the Florida-shaped crack, and then looked at Evelyn Carter getting out of it in a flannel shirt and gym shorts, and to his eternal credit said nothing whatsoever except, Morning, Ms. Carter. Morning, Alvin. She stood on the sidewalk with the grocery bag under her arm and did not go in. Daniel got out and stood on the other side of the car with the roof between them because he'd decided somewhere around Chicago Avenue that there was going to be a distance and that he was going to be the one to hold it. "Thank you," she said. "You don't have to." "I do, actually. I've been trying to construct the sentence since Ashland and I can't, so it's just going to be that. Thank you." "You're welcome." "Daniel." She hugged the bag tighter. "What happens Monday?" "Monday, you're the CEO and I'm on 8. "That's not what I asked." "I know it's not." He put his hands on the roof of the car. "But it's the only answer that doesn't cost you something, so it's the one I'm giving." Evelyn Carter stood on the sidewalk in front of her own building and looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel understood with total unhelpful clarity that if he came around the front of that car right now, everything would change, and that she wanted him to, and that she would regret it by Tuesday, and that she'd never say so. He stayed where he was. "Go on up," he said. "Drink some water. Eat something with salt in it." "That's it. That's it. You're infuriating." "I've been told." She got 3 steps toward the awning and turned around. "The pill," she said. "In the safe. Yolanda Reyes. She wrote the time on a form. It's not going anywhere." "He's going to do something." "Yes," Daniel said. "He is." "You're sure?" "Evelyn." It was the first time he'd used it without being told to. A man who carries that in his jacket to a business party isn't improvising. He's got a routine. And last night somebody broke the routine in front of 9 people. He shut his car door. He's not embarrassed. He's inconvenienced. That's a different animal. Lock your door and answer your phone. He got the call at 4:40 on Sunday afternoon, standing at a picnic table at the Little League field with a cooler full of orange slices. "Daniel." Her voice was wrong, flat and fast. "Where are you, ball field? What happened?" Sterling Foods filed a formal notice of dispute at 3 o'clock on a Sunday. Their general counsel emailed it to my board, my CFO, and my personal address simultaneously. They're alleging billing irregularities on the media buys going back 18 months, and they've suspended the contract pending internal review. Daniel put the orange slices down. "Say the number." $40 million, plus they're referencing material misrepresentation, which is a phrase you use when you're building toward fraud without saying fraud. Who signed it? Their GC. But the internal review is being led by their SVP of brand. A pause. Grant Whitaker. Somebody's kid hit a double. There was cheering. Daniel walked away from the fence. "How fast can you get your board on a phone?" "They're already on a phone. That's why I'm calling you from a stairwell. Harold Vance called an emergency session for 8 a.m. tomorrow, and he's using words like leadership exposure." "Who's Harold Vance?" "He led our Series B. He's been waiting 4 years for a reason." Her breathing was audible. "Daniel, there's something else." "Go." The allegations are specific. They cite 3 invoice numbers. They cite internal line item codes. They quote a media plan revision that never left this building. Her voice dropped so low, he had to press the phone against his ear. Somebody gave it to him. Somebody inside. Daniel stood in the parking lot of a Little League field in Portage Park with his hand over his eyes. "Okay," he said. "Listen to me." "I'm listening." "Don't reply to that email tonight. Not one word, not an acknowledgement, nothing." "I have to." "You have to nothing. Anything you write tonight gets read out loud in a room in 11 months. Second, do not touch a single document in that system. Not to look, not to check, not to verify. If you open one file, the log says you opened it, and in 4 months, a lawyer says the word altered. Daniel, I have to know. You have to be able to prove you didn't look." He was walking fast now. "Third, call your outside counsel tonight and get a litigation hold on every mailbox in that company before anybody deletes anything. Tonight, Evelyn, not tomorrow morning. Whoever leaked is going to spend tonight cleaning up." There was a silence. "How do you know all that?" "Because I sat on this Kellerman account for 4 years, and Kellerman got sued twice," Daniel said, "and I read every deposition because nobody else would." "Of course you did. Call your lawyer." "Daniel," she stopped him, "come in early tomorrow." "That's a bad idea." "I know it's a bad idea." "Evelyn." 7 o'clock, she said, and hung up. He was there at 6:50. The 23rd floor was full at 7 in the morning, which Daniel had never seen. There were 4 people from legal, the CFO, a careful woman named Priya Raghunathan, who had been with the company 9 years, and a man in a very good suit standing at the window with his back to everyone who turned out to be Harold Vance. Evelyn stood at the head of the table in gray hair, up no visible damage of any kind. She had been awake for 26 hours. Daniel could tell because he'd seen her at the end of an all-nighter before, and because she'd stopped using her hands when she talked. She saw him in the doorway. "Brooks, sit." Harold Vance turned around. "Who is this?" "Daniel Brooks, senior strategist, 8th floor, 6 years." "Why is a senior strategist in a board session?" "Because he ran point on Kellerman through 2 lawsuits, and he's the only person in this building who's read a deposition." Evelyn didn't blink. "Sit down, Daniel." He sat, and every single person at that table looked at him, and he understood exactly what she'd just done and exactly what it was going to cost her. The meeting lasted 2 hours and 11 minutes. The short version when it was over was this: Sterling Foods was claiming that Carter Meridian had billed for premium digital placements it had never purchased across 18 months to the tune of somewhere between $2 and $3 million. The invoices existed. They had real numbers on them. They had been approved through the normal chain, which meant they had at the top of that chain an electronic signature belonging to Evelyn Carter. "That signature is auto-applied," Priya said. "It's applied by the system on any invoice over $400,000 once the account lead signs off. Everyone knows that." "Everyone in this room knows that," Vance said. "Nobody in a courtroom knows that." "Then we explain it." "You don't explain things to a jury, Priya, you survive them." Vance turned. "Evelyn, I want to say something, and I want you to hear it as an ally." "Say it." "Step back voluntarily. 30 days. Let Priya sit in the chair. Let the review run. Let it be somebody else's signature on the correspondence." He spread his hands. "It's a nothing move. It's optics. And it takes CEO under fraud investigation off the table before it ever gets printed." "No. Evelyn, if I step back for 30 days, I never come back, and we both know it." Her voice didn't rise. "You want optics. Here's optics." The CEO stepped aside voluntarily. "That's not a headline that says she's cooperative, Harold. That's a headline that says she's guilty and negotiating." "That is not. That's exactly what it is. You are being emotional." The room went perfectly still. Daniel watched Evelyn Carter absorb that word like a punch to the sternum and not move an inch. "Harold," she said pleasantly, "how many of the invoices have you read?" "That's not how many." "I received the notice at 3:40 yesterday." "0. The answer is 0. I've read all 11. She slid a folder down the table. "Line 6 on the second one. The placement code is BQ 4400. That's a code we retired in March of last year. It doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed for 16 months. Which means the invoice Sterling Foods is holding up as evidence of fraud was generated from a template that was archived before the invoice was dated." She let that land. "That's not a billing irregularity. That's a manufacture." Priya Raghunathan sat up so fast her chair squeaked. "Say that again." "Somebody built it," Evelyn said, "out of our own archive, which they had access to." Vance stared at the folder. "That is an extraordinary accusation." "It is." "Do you have proof?" "I have a retired code on a live invoice." "That's not proof that's an anomaly. It's a thread, Harold, and I'd like the room's permission to pull it before we all agree I'm emotional." Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Daniel Brooks, senior strategist, 8th floor, spoke for the first time in 2 hours. "There's a faster way to prove it." Every head turned. "Go ahead," Evelyn said. "Don't argue about the invoice." Daniel leaned forward. "Sterling Foods didn't just receive those invoices, they paid them. 18 months of them. If we actually billed for placements we never ran, then somebody on their side approved payment on 11 invoices without a single question. So either their accounts payable is negligent to a degree no company would ever put in writing," Priya said, "or somebody over there knew." "Somebody over there approved them," Daniel said. "Every one. And that person's name is on a payment authorization on their system, not ours. We don't have to prove we're innocent. We just have to ask them one question in writing: who signed off." Harold Vance sat down slowly. "And if the answer is Whitaker," he said, "then a man who personally approved 11 fraudulent payments is now running the investigation into them," Evelyn said. "And I'd like that in an email." The room came alive. Priya was writing. Legal was talking over each other. Vance was rubbing his jaw with his thumb, looking at Daniel Brooks the way a man looks at a dog that has just spoken. And Evelyn Carter caught Daniel's eye across the length of the table for exactly 1 second, and neither of their faces changed at all, and it was the single most intimate thing that had ever passed between them. Ray Delgado was waiting by the elevator on 8. "23rd floor," he said. Yeah. 2 hours. Yeah. Daniel. Ray fell into step beside him. The whole floor's talking. Sterling's pulled the account is what people are saying. 40 million. Susan in payroll's already updating her resume, and Susan's been here 11 years. Tell Susan not to. Tell me why. Daniel stopped at his cubicle. He looked at Ray Delgado, 58 years old, twice divorced, a card in his wallet from a woman who never signed her name. Because it's not real, he said. Somebody's trying to take her chair. Ray's face changed. Who? I can't. Daniel. Ray, I can't. He sat down and turned on his monitor. But I need something and I need it quiet. Name it. Who has archive access to retired placement codes? Ray thought about it. Media ops, 4 people, maybe 5. Can you get me the list without asking anybody why? I've been in this building since it was 2 floors, Ray said. I can get you the list without anybody knowing the list exists. At 4:15 that afternoon, Evelyn Carter sent an email to the entire company, 240 people, that said in its entirety, "You are going to hear a number today and a rumor tomorrow. Here is what I can tell you: a client has raised a billing dispute. We are cooperating fully. No one's job is affected. I will not be commenting further until I can tell you something true. If anyone tells you otherwise, they are guessing." E.C. Ray Delgado read it twice, printed it, and pinned it above his desk. At 6:20, when the floor had emptied, Daniel's desk phone rang. "Brooks, come up." "That's a bad idea." "Daniel." Her voice was thin as paper. "Come up." She was standing at the window with the lights off and the whole city on. There were 11 invoices printed and spread across the conference table behind her in 2 rows. "They answered," she said. "Already." Their general counsel replied at 5:52 to say that the identity of the approving officer is internal to Sterling Foods and not relevant to the dispute. She didn't turn around. 14 minutes after we asked, they didn't check. They didn't have to check. They knew. Daniel stood in the doorway. "So he's not investigating a fraud," he said. "He's investigating me." She turned around and her face in the window light was something he'd never seen on her. "Daniel, this isn't about money. He didn't do this because of the invoices. He did this because on Friday night, in front of a bartender and 8 strangers, a man he'd never heard of grabbed his wrist and told him to eat a pill off the floor, and now he needs the story about that night to be my story. He needs there to be a version of Evelyn Carter that's already damaged before anybody ever asks what happened at that bar." "I know. You know, I've known since 4:40 yesterday," Daniel said. "He's not covering a fraud, Evelyn. He's building a character." Evelyn Carter put her hand on the back of a chair. "I did this to us," she said. "I got drunk at my own party." "No. I got drunk at my own party and now 240 people." "No." Daniel came into the room. "You want to say something true, say this. A man put something in your glass. You didn't do that. You had a bad night on the anniversary of your mother's death, and a predator saw an opening, and now he's dressing it up as accounting. That's the sentence. Say it in that order, and it stays true no matter who's in the room." She was shaking her head slowly. "If this goes public, then it goes public with a glass in a hotel safe, and 19 minutes of tape, and a night manager named Yolanda Reyes, who wrote the time on a form." Evelyn stopped. "You did that," she said. "Friday, at midnight. While I was throwing up in a parking garage, you were building a file. I was doing my job. That is not your job." "Evelyn." He set his hands on the back of a chair opposite hers. "For 6 years, my job has been finding the thing everybody else assumed somebody already checked. That's all this is. It's slide 9. And she started to laugh, and it went sideways almost immediately, and she pressed her fingertips hard against her closed eyes and stood there in the dark of her own office 23 floors up. "I don't know how to be helped," she said. "I want you to understand that about me. I don't know how to do it. I have never once in my life been in a room where somebody had my back and I wasn't paying them. You're paying me. Don't. I'm serious. I'm on the payroll. 8th-floor senior strategist, 6 years. He waited until she looked. "But I'm not doing it for the money, and you know that, and that's the part that's got you scared. Not Whitaker. This." Evelyn Carter looked across a conference table at a man in a rented suit's cheaper cousin and did not deny it. "There's a rule," she said finally. "In the handbook, page 41, I wrote it." "I know. I read it Saturday night." "Of course you did." "Twice," Daniel said. "Then you know what it says." It says an executive can't have a personal relationship with anyone in their reporting line, which is everyone, which is all 240. Yes, I know. Then you know that whatever this is, Evelyn said, and her voice finally cracked all the way through. There is no version of it that doesn't cost one of us everything. The building hummed. 23 floors down, a truck went by. Then we don't do it, Daniel said. Not now. Not with him holding a match. Right now, I'm the guy on 8 who reads depositions and you're the CEO, and that's all anybody gets to see because the second it's anything else, he doesn't need an invoice anymore. He's got a story. Evelyn nodded once and turned back to the window so he couldn't see her face. Go home to your son, she said. Evelyn, go home, Daniel. He got as far as the elevator before his phone buzzed. Ray Delgado, 6:41 p.m., no greeting, just 5 names and a line underneath. 4 in media ops, 1 outside media ops. That one shouldn't have it. Daniel read the 5th name and stood there while the elevator opened and closed and went away without him. The 5th name was Colleen Ashby. Daniel stood in front of a closed elevator for a full minute reading it, and then he pushed the button again and rode down and drove home without turning on the radio. Colleen Ashby had been Evelyn Carter's executive assistant for 9 years. Everybody in the building knew her. She was 51. She wore reading glasses on a chain. She kept a tin of butterscotch candies on the corner of her desk that had been refilled roughly 4,000 times. And if you needed 20 minutes with the CEO, Colleen Ashby was the person who decided whether you got them. When Daniel's mother died in 2021, the flowers that came to the funeral home had a card in Colleen's handwriting. He sat in his car outside his own building for 20 minutes without going in. Then he went upstairs, and Marcus was at the kitchen table with a worksheet and a pencil he'd chewed to splinters. Dad, what's a synonym for brave? Courageous. That's too long. Bold. That's 4 letters. Marcus wrote it. Where were you? Work. You're always at work now. Daniel sat down across from him. That's true. It's going to be like that for a couple weeks. Why? Because somebody at my job is telling a lie about somebody else, Daniel said, and I'm trying to figure out who. Marcus looked up with total interest. Like a detective, like a guy with a spreadsheet. That's way worse. It's much worse. Do your worksheet. Marcus went back to it. Then without looking up, is it about the boss lady? Daniel didn't answer right away. Yeah, he said, it's about her. Is she okay? No, Daniel said, but she's going to be. He did not call Evelyn that night. He thought about it 11 times, and he didn't do it because he knew what would happen if he said that name to her at 9 o'clock at night with no proof in his hand. She'd defend Colleen, and then she'd have said it out loud, and then she'd have to be a person who'd said it. Instead, he called Ray Delgado. You saw it, Ray said. I saw it. I've known Colleen Ashby since she started. So has everybody. Daniel, that woman drove my sister to chemo twice when I was in Milwaukee. I know. So what are we doing? We're not doing anything on a guess, Daniel said. Can you pull system access logs on the archive without going through IT? No. Okay. But Wendell in IT owes me $1,100 from a fantasy league in 2018, Ray said, and he knows I know. They had it by 10 the next morning. Ray came around the cubicle wall and didn't say anything, just set a single printed page face down on Daniel's desk and stood there while Daniel turned it over. 2 entries. Both on the archive server, both under Colleen Ashby's credentials. The first was a retrieval of a deprecated invoice template at 7:41 on a Wednesday evening in June. The second was a bulk export of 18 months of media byline codes at 7:58 the same night. 7:41, Ray said. You know what's at 7:41 on a Wednesday? Nothing. Nobody's in this building at 7:41 on a Wednesday, except that woman upstairs and whoever's waiting for her. Daniel folded the page and put it in his inside pocket. Where you going? 23. Daniel. Ray caught his arm. Whatever's about to happen up there, remember it's a person. Whatever she did, she's a person. I know that, Ray. Yeah, well, Ray let go. So does she. That's what's going to be hard about it. Evelyn Carter read the page twice, standing up without touching the desk. Then she set it down and said, No. Evelyn. No. This is wrong. This is somebody using her credentials. She was already moving toward the door. Her password is on a sticky note under her keyboard. It's been under her keyboard for 9 years. It says Ashby 1975, and I've told her 40 times, Evelyn. Anyone in this building could... Evelyn. She stopped with her hand on the doorframe. I'm not saying she did it, Daniel said. "I'm saying her name is on it, and that's a fact, and we're going to find out what it means." "You don't understand." She turned around. Her voice had gone somewhere he hadn't heard it go, not in a parking garage, not in the dark of that same office. "When my mother died, that woman flew to Cleveland, on her own money. She sat in a funeral home in Cleveland for 2 days with people she'd never met because I couldn't because I got there late. She stood at the door and she shook hands and she said, 'I work with her daughter 400 times. Her chin was moving. "She's the only person who's ever seen the whole thing, Daniel. She's the only one." Daniel stood very still. "Then we go ask her," he said. "Ourselves. Before legal, before Vance, before anybody. You and me in a room. And if it's true, then you'll know before they do, and you'll get to decide what happens instead of being told." Evelyn Carter closed her eyes. "Get her," she said. "Don't say why." He got as far as the elevator lobby when his phone rang from a number he didn't know. "This is Daniel." "Mr. Brooks." The voice was warm, easy, pleased with itself. "Grant Whitaker." Daniel stepped into the empty stairwell and let the door shut behind him. "How'd you get this number?" "Your company directory is a PDF on your own website. It's been there since 2019. A little laugh. "Somebody should catch that. You seem like a catcher of things." "What do you want?" "To apologize." "Say it again." "I want to apologize," Whitaker said. "Friday night I'd had a hell of a lot to drink and I behaved in a way that gave you the wrong impression. And I've thought about it all weekend and I want to make it right. That's all. That's the entire call. You put something in her glass. I took an antacid out of my pocket, Mr. Brooks, and a man I'd never met put his hand on me in a public place." The warmth didn't waver an inch. "But you know what, I'm not going to argue with you. I'd rather do something better than argue. Let me ask you something. What do you make? Excuse me, what's your salary ballpark?" "We're done." 92.5, Whitaker said. I looked. It wasn't hard, your industry leaks like a colander. 92.5, 6 years, no promotion since 2022, and you're the guy who catches the typos. A pause perfectly measured. Sterling Foods is standing up an in-house brand group in Q1, director level, 215 base, 15% bonus, 4 weeks. I could have an offer in your inbox by Friday, and it would be a completely legitimate offer for a completely legitimate job because you're good, Mr. Brooks. That's the funny part. You're actually good. Daniel leaned his shoulder against the stairwell wall. And in exchange, nothing, not one thing. There's no exchange. Whitaker sounded almost hurt. There's just a fact, which is that a director at Sterling Foods can't very well be a witness against Sterling Foods, and everybody understands that without anybody saying it, which is why nobody's going to say it, including me, including now. You've done this before. I've hired people before. No, Daniel said. The other thing. You've done the other thing before. That's what I keep coming back to. You didn't sweat. 9 people looked at you, and you had a sentence ready in under 2 seconds. Nobody's got a sentence ready in 2 seconds the first time. The line was quiet. You've got a son, Whitaker said. Daniel didn't move. Say the next part. There's no next part. It's a compliment. It's a hard thing raising a kid alone in this city on 92.5, and I admire it, and I'd like to make it easier. Warm, reasonable, almost kind. Northwest Little League, isn't it? My nephew played in that division. Nice fields. Daniel stood in a concrete stairwell on the 23rd floor with his pulse in his ears and understood completely that he was talking to something that had never once in its life been told no by a person who could afford it. Mr. Whitaker. Grant. Mr. Whitaker, I want you to hear this the way I'm saying it without any heat in it. Daniel's voice came out level. Friday night, there were 3 cameras in that bar. There's a night manager named Yolanda Reyes, who's been doing that job 19 years, and who put a cocktail glass in a hotel safe at 11 minutes after 10 with a form in it that has the time on it. There's a bartender who watched the whole thing, and there's me. Silence. That's not a threat, Daniel said. I don't threaten people. I've got a kid who copies everything I do. That's just the inventory. And you should know it exists before you say one more word about a ball field. The pause went on a long time. 92.5, Whitaker said and hung up. Daniel sat down on the stairs. Colleen Ashby came into the conference room at 11:20 with her reading glasses pushed up in her hair and a legal pad because she never went anywhere without a legal pad, and she stopped when she saw that the blinds were closed and that Daniel Brooks was standing against the far wall. What's this? Sit down, Colleen, Evelyn said. Evelyn, please sit down. She sat. She put the legal pad on the table and squared it with the edge, which was a thing Daniel had watched her do 100 times in 100 meetings. Evelyn slid the printed page across. Colleen Ashby looked at it for 4 seconds, and then without a single word, she took her glasses out of her hair, folded them, set them on the table, and put both hands flat on either side of the page. And Daniel knew from the way she did it that she'd been waiting 5 weeks for this exact moment, and had rehearsed something, and was not going to be able to say any of it. "Colleen," Evelyn said, "I want to say first that it wasn't supposed to be this." The room got very quiet. "Say that again." "It wasn't supposed to be this." Colleen's voice broke on the last word, and she pressed her lips together hard and got it back. "It was supposed to be a governance thing, a 30-day step-aside, a review of finding a slap on the wrist about controls, and you'd be back in the chair by fall with a better audit process, and no one would ever—" She stopped. "That's what I was told. That's what I asked. I asked 4 separate times." "Who told you?" Colleen didn't answer. "Colleen, who told you?" "He said you were going anyway." She was crying now and not doing anything about it. "He said the board had already met about you twice without you, and it was a matter of when. He said the only question was whether it happened in a way that was orderly or a way that burned the company down, and there were 240 people, and he used that number. Evelyn, he used your number back at me." "Harold Vance." Colleen Ashby put her hand over her mouth and nodded. Evelyn Carter sat down very slowly in a chair. 9 years, she said. "I know. 9 years, and you pulled 18 months of line codes out of my archive on a Wednesday night and handed them to a man who wants my chair." "I handed them to Harold." Colleen's head came up. "I want to be exact because I've been awake since Sunday being exact. I gave Harold Vance an export and an old template because he told me the board's audit committee needed to model historical exposure and couldn't request it formally without triggering a disclosure. That's what he said. Those words. And I believed it because he's been on this board for 4 years, and because her voice went thin, because I wanted to be the kind of person a board member asks. "Say that again." "Because he asked me," Colleen said. "Because in 9 years I have booked 10,000 meetings, and I have never once been in one, and a man in a good suit stopped me by the elevator and said, 'Colleen, I need your judgment, and I would like to tell you I'm above that.'" She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I'm not above it. That's the whole thing. That's the entire crime. I'm 51 years old and I got flattered." Nobody said anything for a while. "Did you know what it was for?" Evelyn asked. "No." "Did you know when you saw the notice on Sunday?" Colleen closed her eyes. "Yes." "And you came to work on Monday and sat outside my door?" "Yes." "Colleen." "I brought you a coffee," Colleen said, and made a terrible sound and put her face in her hands. "I brought you a coffee at 7:15, and I stood there while you told Harold Vance you weren't stepping down, and I thought I did that. I'm the reason he's in that room, and I went to the bathroom on 19 and I threw up." Daniel spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Ashby." She looked up. "Did you keep anything?" Colleen Ashby wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand and straightened up in her chair, and for 1 second the woman who'd guarded a door for 9 years came all the way back. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I'm an assistant. I keep everything." She had 41 emails. She had a calendar invite from Harold Vance dated 11 days before the export subject line, "Quick coffee, nothing formal." She had a text thread. She had because she was the kind of person who forwards herself things, a copy of the exact file she'd sent and the exact hour she'd sent it. And she had one message at 6:14 on the Wednesday morning of the export that Evelyn Carter read out loud in a voice like a flat stone. Colleen appreciate the discretion. 2 names to be aware of on the Sterling side. They'll be running point on the diligence. They're GC and G. Whitaker, SVP brand. If either reaches out, loop me first, not E. Evelyn set the phone down. He knew Whitaker. "He introduced them," Colleen said. "In March, at the Prescott thing. I made the reservation." "You made the reservation?" $58 a head, Colleen said hollowly, "at a steakhouse on Rush, and I remember because I had to expense it under a code that didn't fit." Daniel stood at the window with his back to the room and did the arithmetic and felt the floor move under him. Because it meant Friday night was not an accident and not an impulse. It meant a board member who wanted a CEO removed had spent 4 months in the same rooms as a man who carried tablets in his jacket, and that whether or not one of them ever said a word about it out loud, and Daniel would believe to his last day that they never did that. Men like that never do that. They simply stand near each other until the thing happens. Grant Whitaker had walked into that hotel bar, knowing that if Evelyn Carter fell apart in public, there was a man on her board who would help carry the story. "Evelyn," he said, "I know. You need to hear me say it anyway. I know what it is." Her voice was absolutely level. "It's a pincer. He damages me personally. Harold damages me structurally, and neither one of them ever has to be in a room with the other one when it happens." Colleen Ashby looked from one of them to the other. "What are you talking about? What happened Friday?" Evelyn opened her mouth. And then she looked at Daniel, and Daniel gave her nothing. No nod, no shake of the head, nothing at all because it was not his to give. "Nothing happened Friday," Evelyn said. "Colleen, go home." "Evelyn, go home and don't talk to anybody and don't delete anything and don't answer Harold Vance. Not one message. If he calls, you're sick." She stood. "And Colleen." Colleen Ashby stopped at the door. "I'm not firing you today," Evelyn said. "I'm not saying I won't. I'm saying not today because today I need you, and because I'd rather be honest about the order of those two things than pretend." Colleen nodded twice and left. The emergency board session reconvened at 8 the next morning. Harold Vance was already there when Evelyn came in a different very good suit with a leather folio, and he stood up like a gentleman and pulled out a chair for her, and she looked at it and sat somewhere else. "Evelyn." "Harold. I want to start by saying that I've reconsidered the tone of Monday's conversation," he said to the room. "I was blunt and I regret it. But I'm going to be blunt again because it's Wednesday and the situation has deteriorated. I received a call last night from a reporter at Crane's." Priya Raghunathan's head came up. "Asking what?" "Asking whether Carter Meridian's CEO is the subject of a fraud review by its largest client." He let it sit. "I said no comment. I'd like the record to reflect that I said no comment." "The record reflects it," Evelyn said. "Who else did the reporter call?" "I have no idea." "Did she say how she heard?" "She did not." "That's unusual for a reporter," Evelyn said pleasantly. "In my experience, they lead with it. It's how they get you talking." "Evelyn." "Harold, before we go further, I want to correct something from Monday. You said I was being emotional." She opened a folder. "So I've made an effort to be extremely unemotional this morning. Priya, read the first item." Priya Raghunathan cleared her throat. "Sterling Foods accounts payable approved and released payment on all 11 disputed invoices. Their approval workflow requires a named officer. We requested the name in writing Monday and were refused in 14 minutes. Second item." "We obtained it anyway," Priya said, "because their AP office sent the remittance advices to us in the ordinary course 18 times, and the approving officer's name is in the footer of every one of them. It's on our own server. It's been on our own server for a year and a half." Somebody at the table said, "Oh, for God's sake. Say the name Priya." "Grant Whitaker." Harold Vance's face did not move at all, which Daniel, sitting in the same chair he'd sat in Monday, having been named to the room again, in the same 3 words, "Sit down." Daniel found more damning than anything else that happened that morning. "So the man leading Sterling's investigation into fraudulent invoices," Evelyn said, "personally approved every fraudulent invoice, 11 times, over 18 months, which means either he is the most negligent officer in American consumer packaged goods, or the invoices aren't fraudulent, or he made them himself. I don't actually care which. Any one of the 3 ends this dispute." "That's not—" "Third item," Evelyn said. "The invoice cited in their notice was generated from a template retired from our systems 16 months ago. Somebody pulled that template out of our archive on the 11th of June at 7:41 p.m. Now Vance moved. It was very small, his thumb on the edge of the folio. "Do we know who?" he said. And Evelyn Carter looked at him for what Daniel counted later as 4 full seconds. "Yes," she said, "we do." The room waited. "I'm not putting the name in the minutes today," Evelyn said, "because the person who pulled that file was lied to about what it was for by someone who had authority over them and used it. And because I've spent 4 days learning something about this company that I should have learned 9 years ago, which is that I built a place where people are terrified of me and grateful to me at the same time, and that combination will make almost anyone do almost anything if the right man asks nicely." She closed the folder. "That's my failure. It's going in the minutes as my failure. What I'm asking this board for today is a forensic review of every external contact with Sterling Foods personnel by anyone associated with this company, employee, officer, or director, going back 6 months. Independent firm, not our counsel. Full device and calendar cooperation, voluntary, signed by everyone in this room. Nobody breathed. Voluntary, Harold Vance said. Voluntary. And if a director declines, then that's also information, Evelyn said, and it also goes in the minutes. Priya Raghunathan said, I second it. It carried 7-2. Harold Vance signed the cooperation letter in front of everyone with a very steady hand and shook Evelyn's hand on the way out and said, good session, and was gone from the board of Carter Meridian 19 days later by resignation for reasons the press release described as personal. He never went to prison. Daniel would think about that for years afterward, that a man could do what Harold Vance did and simply drive away from it into another set of board seats in another city, and that the only actual punishment in the world for a certain kind of man is that he has to keep being himself. Sterling Foods withdrew the dispute 9 days later in a letter of 4 paragraphs that contained no apology of any kind. Their general counsel called it a reconciliation of documentation. The contract was reinstated at full value. Grant Whitaker's name did not appear in the letter, and 11 weeks later, a very short item ran in a trade newsletter noting that Sterling Foods' SVP of brand had departed to pursue other opportunities, which is a sentence that means nothing and everything. Evelyn Carter did not use the tape. She had it. Yolanda Reyes still had it. She could have put 19 minutes of hotel security footage in front of Sterling's CEO on day 3 and ended the entire thing in an afternoon, and Priya Raghunathan, who by then knew, because Evelyn had told her at 11 o'clock one night in an empty office, asked her directly why she didn't. Because then it's the story, Evelyn said, forever, whatever else I ever do, and because the second I use it as leverage, it stops being what happened to me and starts being an asset, and then I'm the one who's decided it was worth $2 million. She'd shaken her head. It's not a card. I'm not playing it as a card. And if he does it to somebody else? Evelyn was quiet a long time. Then it's still there, she said, in a safe, with the time written on a form, and when she comes forward, and she will, Priya, they always do, it just takes years. There'll be a woman she's never met with 19 minutes of tape saying, I believe you, here's proof you're not first. The Thursday it ended, Evelyn Carter came down to the 8th floor. The whole floor stopped. 240 people worked in that building, and not one of them could remember the CEO walking out of an elevator on 8 without a reason. She walked to Ray Delgado's desk first. Mr. Delgado? Ray stood up so fast his chair rolled into the partition. Miss Carter, you called a man in IT about a fantasy football debt. Ray's face went through several colors. That's... Wendell told legal. Legal told me. Legal is upset. Evelyn put out her hand. Thank you. Ray Delgado shook the hand of the woman whose card had been in his wallet since 2019 and could not say a single word. Then she went to Daniel's cubicle, and everybody on the 8th floor pretended very hard to be looking at something else. Brooks, Ms. Carter, 20 minutes, upstairs. The blinds were open this time. That was the first thing he noticed. In 6 years, he'd never seen that office in daylight with the blinds open and nobody else in it. It's over, she said. I know, Priya sent the note. Priya sent the note to the company. I'm telling you. She stayed standing. There's a version of the last 3 weeks where I lose everything I've built, and the only reason there isn't is that a man on the 8th floor read 11 invoices. Nobody asked him to read and knew what a remittance footer was. You found the retired code. I didn't find that. Daniel, I mean it. You found it. You'd been up for 26 hours, and you found a placement code on line 6, and everybody in that room was talking about optics. He shrugged. I want that on the record, too. Evelyn Carter looked at him and then looked away out the window, and Daniel watched her arrange something in her head and take a breath. I'm offering you a job, she said. Okay. Don't say okay yet. Sit down. He sat. Meridian Public is a subsidiary, she said. Nonprofit and municipal accounts. Hospital systems, school districts, the transit authority. It bills a fraction of what the commercial side does, and it's the reason I can sleep on the nights I sleep. It's run by a woman named Ann Boyer out of the Wells Street office, and Ann is 63, and she's retiring in 14 months, and she has told me twice that she has no successor. Evelyn. Deputy Director. 160 base, which is not a favor. It's the band, you can look it up. Anne reports to a subsidiary board, not to me. She said the last part carefully, like a person setting down something breakable. I have no operational authority over Meridian Public. I can't promote you, I can't review you, I can't fire you, and I can't protect you. My name is nowhere in your reporting line. It's not a loophole. Legal built it, and legal hates me. Daniel sat with his hands on his knees. You planned this. I asked Priya to look at it on the 6th. The 6th? That's 2 days after. Yes. Evelyn. He looked at the floor. Say the whole thing. Don't make it a job. She was quiet. If you stay on 8, she said, then every single thing that happens between us for the rest of our lives is something I did to an employee. That's what it is. It doesn't matter what's true. I could love you for 40 years, and every person who ever hears about it will hear it as the CEO and the guy on 8, and the day I die, somebody will write it that way, and... Her voice caught, and she pushed through it. And worse than that, Daniel, is that you would never know. Not really. You'd never know if you got a thing because you earned it or because you were mine. And I have watched what that does to a person. I watched Curtis Ballard do it to 3 women with less than that. Daniel didn't move. And if I take it, he said, then in 6 months when somebody sees us at a restaurant, the story is that the CEO moved a guy to a subsidiary so she could date him. That's the story, Evelyn. It's the same story. Yes. So it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't fix the story, Evelyn said. Nothing fixes the story. There's no arrangement of facts on this earth that stops people from saying what they want to say about a woman my age and a man your age. She finally sat down across from him, not behind the desk. It fixes the truth. That's the only thing I get to control. In 2 years, when it's hard, and it will be hard, I'm difficult, and I work too much, and I have a cardiologist who hands me pamphlets, and I need to be able to look at each other and know that not one single thing in your career came out of my hand. That's what this is. It's not romantic. It's the least romantic thing I've ever done. Daniel looked at the offer letter on the desk between them and did not pick it up. There's a problem, he said. Tell me. Marcus, I know. No, you don't, and I'm not saying that to be cruel. He leaned forward. Wells Street is a 40-minute commute. His school's in Portage Park. He's got a game or a practice 4 days a week from March to July, and I'm the guy who drives the van. Mrs. Alvarez is 71, and I'm already asking too much of her. He rubbed his face. And underneath all of that, there's a thing I've never said out loud to anybody. Say it. 9 years ago, his mother left. Daniel's voice stayed flat. She didn't do anything dramatic. She just decided she wanted a different life, and she was honest about it, which people always say is the kindest way, and it is not. And that kid has spent 9 years watching the door. He looked up. So the day I bring somebody home for real, not a woman who slept on the couch one night for real, I'm making him a promise on behalf of a person who isn't me. And if it goes wrong, I don't get to explain to him that adults are complicated. He just learns it again. Evelyn Carter sat with her hands in her lap. Then I'll tell you what I can promise, she said. It isn't much. I can't promise you it works. Nobody can promise that, and anyone who does is lying to you. She met his eyes. But I will never ask you to choose between me and your son, not once, not in an argument, not on a bad night, not when I'm tired and unreasonable, which I will be. And if it ever comes to it, I don't want you to choose me. I want you to choose him, every time, without discussing it. Evelyn. The fact that you love that kid the way you do is the entire reason I trust you, she said. You understand that, don't you? It's not in spite of him. It's because of him. I have spent 20 years in rooms full of people who would step over their own mother for a percentage point, and then a man carries a drunk woman up 2 flights of stairs, and the only reason he can give is that his son might have to do the same thing someday. Her eyes were bright, and she didn't wipe them. You're the first person I've ever met who has something in his life that outranks me. Do you know how restful that is? Daniel Brooks put both hands over his mouth and sat there for a long moment. Then he picked up the letter and folded it once and put it in his inside pocket in the same place he'd carried a printed page with Colleen Ashby's name on it. I'm not answering today, he said. I know. I have to ask him. Evelyn Carter blinked. Ask who? Marcus. He's 9. He's the other guy who lives in my house, Daniel said and stood up. Somebody moves a chair in that apartment, he gets a vote. I'm not going to change how it works for the first time on the biggest one. and he was almost at the door when she said his name, and he turned around, and Evelyn Carter, who had faced down aboard a client and a man who wanted her chair in the space of 9 days, without her voice shaking, once said, "Daniel, what if he says no?" "Then I stay on 8, Daniel said, "and you and I never happen, and I'll be all right, and you'll be all right, and that'll be the end of it." "You'd do that?" "Evelyn," he said, "that's the thing you said you trusted." He asked him that night at the kitchen table over a frozen pizza that had come out of the oven 11 minutes late because Daniel had forgotten to set the timer twice. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to not be 9 about it." Marcus put down his slice. "That's not fair. I'm always 9. "That's true. That was a bad way to start." "Are we moving?" "No." "Are you sick?" "No. God, no." Daniel pushed his plate aside. "Why'd you go there?" "Because that's how it goes on TV. The dad says we have to talk, and then it's cancer." "Nobody has cancer." Daniel put both forearms on the table. "I got offered a different job." Marcus waited. "Okay. It's at a different office, on Wells Street. It's a part of the company that does work for hospitals and schools and the bus system. Better title, more money, a lot more money actually. So take it. It's 40 minutes away instead of 20. "Oh." Marcus did the math on his fingers, which he still did, and would probably do at 40. "That's 40 extra minutes twice. That's like 80. "That's exactly 80. "That's a lot of 80. "It is." Daniel turned his water glass in a circle on the table. "Here's the part I actually have to tell you. There's a reason for the job that isn't just the job." "Is it about the boss lady?" Daniel stopped turning the glass. "You are entirely too smart," he said. "I'm not smart, you just talk about her." Marcus picked his pizza back up. "You said her name like 9 times since Sunday. You never say names. You didn't say Coach Ted's name for 2 years. You called him Coach Ted. That's his name." "You know what I mean." Daniel sat back in his chair and looked at his son and felt the thing he felt maybe 4 times a year, which was the sudden vertigo of realizing that the small person across the table had been watching him the entire time, every day, all 9 years, taking notes on a father who thought he was being unreadable. "Okay," he said. "Here it is straight. I like her. She likes me. And we can't do anything about that as long as she's my boss, because that's not fair to anybody, and because the rules say so, and because they're good rules. So if I take this job, she isn't my boss anymore, and then it could be a real thing." He held his son's eyes. "And if it's a real thing, then she's in this house. Not once, not for a night, in it. Birthdays, Christmas, bad days." Marcus chewed. His face did nothing at all, which Daniel recognized with a small internal collapse as his own face. "Do you want me to say it's fine?" Marcus asked. "No, because I could say it's fine." "I know you could. You're the best in the world at saying it's fine." Daniel's voice went rough. "That's why I'm asking you at the table with the pizza and not in the car, because in the car you'd say fine and look out the window and I'd take it and I'd be a coward." Marcus set the crust down. He looked at it for a while. "Is she going to leave?" he said. There it was. Daniel had known it was coming from the second he sat down, and it still went into him like a nail. "I don't know," he said. "That's not the answer. It's the true one. If I tell you no, I'm making a promise with somebody else's mouth, and I'm not doing that to you. Not ever again." "Again," Daniel breathed out. "When you were 8 months old," he said, "I told you every night that our family was going to be exactly the way it was forever. I said it about 400 times. You don't remember it. I do. And I was wrong, and I'd said it like it was a fact, and I have thought about that for 9 years. Marcus was quiet. "I don't remember her," he said finally. "I know. Like it all. I remember the couch, the green one. I don't remember her on it." He said it flatly, like a kid reporting a score. "Sometimes I say I remember stuff because you look happy when I do." Daniel put his hand over his mouth. "Bud," he said, "it's not sad." Marcus shrugged. "It's just true. Everybody at school has this thing where their mom's somewhere. Mine's just not a place. It's more like a word." "Marcus, so I don't care about that part," his son said. "That's what I'm trying to say, and I'm saying it bad. I don't care about a mom. I've got Mrs. Alvarez, and I've got you, and I've got Coach Ted in the chair." He looked up. "I care that you're going to be sad again." The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere below them, a door slammed and a bike got dragged over a threshold. "Say the rest of it," Daniel said. "When she left, you were sad for a really long time." Marcus's chin was doing something. I was little, but I'm not stupid. You did the thing where you sat in the chair with your shoes on. You did it for like a year. And I used to come out at night and you'd be sitting there and you'd say, "Go back to bed, bud," and you'd smile with your mouth. He wiped his nose with his wrist. You did the chair thing again last week, with her on the couch. I saw you from the hall. Daniel Brooks sat at a kitchen table with a 9-year-old and could not speak. So that's my question, Marcus said. Not is she going to leave. If she leaves, are you going back in the chair? It took Daniel a long time. Probably for a while, he said. Okay, but not a year. And I'd tell you it was happening instead of smiling with my mouth. And you and I would be fine, because you and I are the part that doesn't change. That's not a promise about her. That's a promise about us, and that one's mine to make, so I'm making it. Marcus considered this with tremendous seriousness. Then he nodded once. Okay, he said. I have conditions. Of course you do. 3. Naturally 3. 1. She has to come to a game, a real one, not a practice, and she has to stay the whole time even if we're losing because we're going to be losing. Marcus counted on his fingers. 2. She's not allowed to buy me stuff for like a month. Ricky Delgado's stepdad bought him a Nintendo before he even met him, and now Ricky has to be nice to him forever and he hates it. That's very good. That's number 3. No. Marcus's ears had gone red. 3 is she has to know I'm not going to call her mom, ever, not even when I'm old, because that's a whole different word and it's not hers, it's not anybody's, and I don't want anybody to ask me about it in like 4 years and get sad about it. Daniel got up, went around the table, and pulled his son out of the chair and held on to him. Deal, he said into his hair. All 3. I'll tell her tonight. Dad, you're squishing. I know. Dad. Give me a second, bud. I'm having a whole thing. He called her at 9:40, standing on the back porch with the door cracked so he could hear the apartment. It's me. How did it go? He voted yes. There was a sound on the other end of the line that Daniel had never heard Evelyn Carter make. He has terms, Daniel said. He has terms 3. Read them to me. You've got to come to a game and stay the whole time even when we lose, and we will lose. No presents for a month because presents make a kid owe you. And nobody's ever going to ask him to call you mom. Not now, not in 20 years, because that word belongs to somebody else, and he doesn't want anybody sad about it later. The line was silent for a long moment. Evelyn. I'm here. Her voice was wrecked. Give me a second. I'm in my kitchen. I'm sitting on the floor of my kitchen. Why are you on the floor? Because a 9-year-old just negotiated better terms than my Series B, she said, and I'd like to point out that I have been on 11 panels about leadership. He gets it from his mother. Daniel. That was a joke. It was a terrible joke, Evelyn said, and started to laugh, and it went wet almost immediately. Tell him yes, all 3. Tell him I said yes without negotiating, which he should know is the only compliment I know how to give. High gave his notice on 8 the next morning, and Ray Delgado took it worse than anyone. Wells Street. Wells Street. That's not even a real office that's 4 rooms over a bank. It's 6 rooms. 6 rooms. Ray put down his coffee. Daniel, you're the best strategist on this floor, and you're going to go make posters for the bus. I'm going to run the accounts that keep hospitals open. Don't do the noble voice at me. I invented the noble voice. Ray looked at him for a second. Is it her? Daniel didn't answer. It's her, Ray said. Ray. Hey, hey. Ray held up both hands. I'm not asking. I'm 58 years old. I've been divorced twice, and I know what a man looks like when he's about to do something inconvenient on purpose. He picked his coffee back up. I'll tell you what I told my nephew when he joined the Navy. It's the wrong decision, I'm proud of you, and if you need somebody to yell at somebody, you call me first. That's a good speech. I've had it ready since Monday, Ray said. Now go say goodbye to Susan in payroll before she cries on my desk again. The last thing he did on the 8th floor at 5:50 on his final Friday was fix a typo on a deck he wasn't going to be around to present. He didn't tell anybody. He just found it and fixed it and closed the file, and Ray Delgado, watching from the next cubicle, saw him do it and had to go stand in the stairwell for a minute. Colleen Ashby resigned 11 days after the board session. She did it in writing formally with 2 weeks' notice and a transition memo of 11 pages covering things nobody but her had known for 9 years, which vendors invoiced in arrears, which board member's wife's name was Bitsy and not Elizabeth, which conference rooms had the bad phone. Evelyn read it twice and then went out to the desk with the butterscotch tin on it. I'm not accepting this. You have to. I don't have to do anything, Colleen. I own 31% of the company. Evelyn. Colleen took her glasses off. Sit down for a second. Nobody's here. Evelyn sat on the edge of the desk, which she had never done in 9 years. I've thought about it every night, Colleen said, and here's where I land. If I stay, then every single time you have to make a decision about anything sensitive, there's going to be 1/2 second where you think about June 11th. Not because you're cruel, because you're a person. She folded the glasses and set them down. And I'd rather leave with you thinking well of me than stay and watch you get careful around me. I've watched you be careful around people. It's the worst thing you do. You didn't do it for money. That doesn't matter. It matters to me. It matters to you, Colleen said. It doesn't matter to the fact. She reached over and squared her legal pad against the edge of the desk one last time. I gave a man on your board the tools he needed because he made me feel important for 4 minutes by an elevator. And you're going to say it was manipulation, and it was, and I'm still the one who opened the file. Evelyn Carter sat on the edge of a desk with her hands in her lap. You went to Cleveland, she said. Colleen's face broke. I would go again, she said. Tomorrow. I know. Evelyn, I would go tomorrow. I know. Evelyn reached over and took her hand, which she had also never done in 9 years. Where are you going? Northwestern Memorial, Patient Services. It's less money, and I have to wear a badge with my picture on it, and I start on the 12th. That's a good job. It's a good job, Colleen agreed, wiping her face. You'll hate whoever replaces me. I'm going to hate them so much. Good, said Colleen Ashby. You should. The first date was a Tuesday because Marcus had no game on Tuesdays, and it was a diner on Lawrence Avenue with laminated menus and a waitress named Dot, who had worked there since the Reagan administration. Evelyn Carter, who had eaten at 4 restaurants in Chicago with Michelin stars, arrived 11 minutes early and sat in a vinyl booth with her hands flat on the table like a woman waiting for test results. You're early, Daniel said, sliding in. I've been in the car since 6:40. It's 7:02. I know what time it is. She had her hair down. He'd seen it down exactly twice, both in his own apartment, and it did something to his chest that he decided not to report. I couldn't remember how to walk into a restaurant that I hadn't picked for a reason. Do you understand that every meal I've eaten in this city for 8 years was a meal about something? This one's about eggs. They serve eggs at 7 at night. Evelyn. He handed her a menu. This is America. She laughed and Dot came over and Evelyn Carter ordered a hot turkey sandwich with gravy and a Coke and then folded her hands and said, All right, what do people do? What? On a date. What do they do? I want you to know I've been on dates. I've been on many dates, but they were all... She waved a hand. There was a wine list involved. There was a man explaining something. Once a man explained my own industry to me for 50 minutes, and I let him because it was restful. You let him. It was restful, Daniel. Okay, here's what people do. He put his elbows on the table. They tell each other stuff nobody's asked about in a long time. That's it. That's the whole activity. That's terrifying. That's why there's pie. She was quiet for a second. You go first, she said. So he told her about being 9 years old in a kitchen in Rockford, and about the man who lived with them for 2 years, who was not his father, and about the specific tone of voice that man used right before things stopped being a conversation. He told her he'd been afraid of that tone his whole life, and that the only time it ever left him completely was in the 12 seconds it took to cross a hotel bar. That's why you moved, she said. That's why I moved. Not because of me. Both, Daniel said. That's the honest answer. Both things were true at the same time, and I've stopped trying to separate them. Evelyn turned her Coke glass a quarter turn. My turn, she said. You don't have to. You just told me about a kitchen in Rockford. She took a breath. I have a brother. Daniel didn't move. Michael. He's 46. He's in Peoria. He installs commercial flooring. She said it all in one go, like a woman getting into cold water. We haven't spoken in 6 years, and it's my fault, and I'd like to say the reason is complicated, but it isn't. When my father died, I paid for the funeral, and I did it fast, and I did it well, and I didn't ask him. I just handled it. And at the reception, he said, You always do that. And I said something back that I'm not going to repeat, and that was it. 6 years. What did you say? I'm not going to repeat it. Evelyn. I said somebody had to, and it was never going to be you. Dot set down 2 plates and left again without a word, having correctly identified the shape of the conversation from 10 feet away. "That's a bad one," Daniel said. "Thank you. Yes, it's a bad one." "Have you tried?" "I've written 4 emails and sent 0. She picked up her fork and put it back down. "The problem is I know exactly how to fix it. I could fix it in 1 phone call. I've negotiated harder things with worse people on less sleep. I know the words." "So why don't you—" "Because if I call him and he doesn't pick up," Evelyn said, "then I don't have a brother. Right now I have a brother I don't talk to. Those are different." Her voice was very steady and very thin. "Not calling is a decision I'm making. Calling makes it a decision he's making. And I have spent my entire life arranging things so that nobody else gets to make the decision." Daniel sat with that for a while. "That's the most honest thing you've said to me," he said. "It's the worst thing I've said to you." "Those are usually the same." He picked up his coffee. "Can I say a thing?" "You're going to whether I say yes." "Marcus does that." He set the cup down. "When he strikes out, he doesn't come back to the dugout. He stands out by the fence and unbuckles his shin guards very slowly. Takes about 4 minutes. And I finally asked him why, and he said, 'Because if I come back, you'll all be nice to me, and then I'll know it was bad.'" Evelyn Carter put her hand over her eyes. "That's cheating," she said. "That's a diner. That's what happens at diners. You are so much more dangerous than you look. I've been told." They stayed until 10. Dot refilled the coffee 4 times and then stopped charging for it. Evelyn told him about a bakery truck and a father who called her kiddo until she was 34, and Daniel told her about the 2nd year after the divorce, which was worse than the 1st year, and which nobody warns you about, and neither of them said 1 word about a hotel bar or an invoice or a board. In the parking lot, she stopped at her car and didn't open it. "Daniel." "Yeah. I'd like to say something and I need you to let me finish it badly." "Go ahead." "I don't know how to do this and I'm not going to be good at it." She was holding her keys hard enough that they were making marks. "I'm going to work too much. I'm going to answer my phone at dinner and hate myself and do it again. I'm going to be short with you when I'm tired, and I'm going to apologize in a way that sounds like a memo. And there's going to be a night I can see it. I can see it exactly where you look at me and think, this woman is a project. Okay. That's it. Okay. Evelyn, I've got a 9-year-old, a 14-year-old car, a dad who wasn't there, and a habit of sleeping in a chair with my shoes on." He shrugged. "I'm not shopping for easy. I stopped shopping at all. I was doing fine and I'd made my peace with fine, and then a woman asked me if I was safe to be tired around, and I've been ruined for fine ever since." She kissed him in a diner parking lot on Lawrence Avenue at 10:14 on a Tuesday night, and she was shaking and she was embarrassed about it, and she said so, and he told her to stop apologizing in memos. The photograph appeared 18 days later. It ran in a media industry newsletter that 4,000 people read, and nobody admitted to reading in a section at the bottom called Around the Loop. It was a phone picture taken through a window grainy from across the street. In it, Evelyn Carter was sitting in a booth in a diner. Across from her was a man whose face was mostly turned away. The caption was 2 sentences. "Which agency CEO, fresh off a very quiet client dispute, has been spotted keeping company on Lawrence Avenue, and which recently relocated employee is having a very good year. Priya Raghunathan called at 6:50 in the morning. Have you seen it?" "I've seen it," Evelyn said. "Do you want me to?" "No." "Evelyn, I can have our comms people on the phone with them in 20 minutes. We killed worse than this during the dispute." "Priya!" Evelyn was standing in her kitchen with the phone against her shoulder. "If we call them, they know it lands. And then it's a story with a second day. Let it sit. And the board. I'll handle the board. And Daniel." Evelyn closed her eyes. "I'll handle Daniel," she said, and knew even as she said it that she'd said it wrong. He rated at 7:15 on his phone standing in the kitchen while Marcus poured cereal, and the first thing he felt was not anger. It was a cold, specific dread that he located immediately because he'd been carrying it since a stairwell 3 weeks earlier. "Northwest Little League, isn't it? My nephew played in that division." He called her from the car. "It's him," he said. "You don't know that." "Evelyn, it's a picture through a window at a diner in Albany Park. Who follows a CEO to a diner in Albany Park? Nobody. There's no story there, unless somebody's been paying attention for a month specifically, so there would be one." "It could be Harold." "Harold Vance has 4 board seats and a house in Lake Forest. He's not sitting in a Buick on Lawrence Avenue with a phone." Daniel pulled over. It's Whitaker. He got walked out of a job with a nothing sentence in a newsletter, and this is what he's got left. He can't touch the company, he can't touch you legally, so he does this. It's not a strategy, it's a guy throwing a rock. Then we ignore it. That's what I'm afraid of. Excuse me. You said we ignore it in your bored voice, Daniel said. Same voice you used on Vance. It's a good voice. It's just not the one I want pointed at me. There was a silence on the line. That's fair, she said. I'm not fighting with you. You should be. Evelyn's voice changed, dropped, got smaller. I told Priya I'd handle you. Those were my words. I'll handle Daniel. I heard it come out of my mouth at 10 to 7 this morning, and I've been sitting here since. Yeah, well, don't do that. Do what? Let me off. You do that. You did it in the parking garage. You did it at the diner. You have this thing where you take the hit and go smooth. Her voice cracked. I need you to be a person who gets to be annoyed with me, or this is just a nicer version of everything else in my life. Daniel sat in his car on Milwaukee Avenue with the hazards on. All right, he said. I hated it. Good. I hated it a lot, because 240 people at that company are going to read that caption today, and every one of them is going to decide what I am, and there's not a thing I can do about it. And I knew that going in, and I took the job anyway, and it still felt like getting hit in the mouth. He breathed out. And underneath that, I've got something worse, and I need to say it. Say it. He mentioned Marcus's league on the phone 3 weeks ago. The silence on the other end went absolute. You never told me that. No. Daniel, I know. You've been carrying that since the stairwell. I know what I've been doing. Why didn't you tell me? Because you had a board meeting at 8 in the morning, Daniel said, and because I'm the guy who fixes it before it's a problem. That's the whole thing I am. That's what I did with my marriage for 4 years, actually, since we're doing honesty in the car. His voice had gone hoarse. I handled it. All of it. Every hard conversation I handled by myself so nobody had to have it. And one day she said she felt like she lived with a very kind stranger, and she was right, and I've thought about it for 9 years. He heard her breathing. So there, he said. We both do it. You handle people and I handle problems, and neither one of us has ever once let anybody carry anything. What do? We start now, I guess, Daniel said. I'm telling you now. Then tell me the whole thing, all of it. What did he say exactly? So he told her sitting in a car with the hazards on, and when he got to the part about the nice fields, Evelyn Carter said a word that Daniel had never heard her say twice, and then said, "Give me an hour." She did 3 things in an hour, and Daniel didn't learn about any of them until later. She called Yolanda Reyes at the Ellsworth and confirmed the glass and the tape were still in the safe, and had a lawyer send a preservation letter so they'd stay there for 7 years. She called a securities consultant and had a very short conversation about a Park District ball field in Portage Park and about what a person in a parked car looks like, and she paid for 4 weeks of somebody sitting in the bleachers with a coffee, and she never told Daniel and he never knew, and it wasn't needed, and she'd have paid for a year. And then she sent one email to the entire company, 240 people at 8:04 in the morning. You're going to see an item today. I'd rather you hear it from me than assemble it. I am seeing Daniel Brooks. He left the commercial side 3 weeks ago for a deputy director role at Meridian Public, which reports to a separate board. I have no authority over his position, his compensation, or his review, and legal built it that way before either of us went on a date because the alternative was unacceptable to both of us. Some of you will think that's tidy. Some of you will think it's convenient. I'd think that too. All I can tell you is the order things happened in, and that the order matters to me more than it will to anyone reading a caption. One more thing, and then I'm done, and I won't mention it again. I've spent 9 years asking this company to tell me the truth early, when it's still small and embarrassing, instead of late when it's a crisis. I have not always made that easy. I'm doing it now because I'd be a hypocrite otherwise. E.C. Ray Delgado read it at his desk on 8, laughed out loud once, printed it, and pinned it above the other one. Marcus's game was that Saturday, and it was a disaster. They lost 14-3. Marcus took a foul tip off the collarbone in the 2nd inning and stayed in. In the 4th, he got picked off second by a kid who'd clearly done it before. He struck out twice, both times swinging at the same low pitch. Evelyn Carter sat on an aluminum bleacher in a folding chair-adjacent posture for 2 hours and 11 minutes and did not check her phone once, which she would later describe as the single hardest professional accomplishment of her career. At the end of the 6th, when it was over, Marcus stood out by the fence and unbuckled his shin guards very slowly. Daniel started toward him, and Evelyn put a hand on his arm. "Let me," she said. "Evelyn, you told me what it means. Let me." She walked out to the fence in a cardigan and jeans and stood next to a 9-year-old catcher and did not say anything at all for about 90 seconds. "You saw the whole game," she said finally. Marcus didn't look up. "I lost the whole game. Your dad told me what your father's sorry. Somebody told me once that a catcher's the only one on the field who can see all of it. Everybody else looks one way. You look back at everything." She put her hands in her cardigan pockets. "So you're the only person here who actually knows what happened today. Everyone else just knows the number." Marcus worked at the second buckle. "It was 14, he said. "It was 14. What else was it?" He was quiet a long time. "Their pitcher was throwing low, and I called it 8 times, and Petey wouldn't come down," Marcus said. "I kept calling low. He kept going high. And then I went up there and did the same exact thing he was doing, and struck out on the same exact pitch." His voice wobbled. "So I'm a hypocrite. That's a big word for a Saturday. My dad says it." "Your dad's very annoying," Evelyn said, and Marcus laughed once wetly and wiped his face on his sleeve. "Are you going to say the thing?" "What thing?" "The grown-up thing, where you say I did great." "No," Evelyn said. "You got picked off second because you were watching the outfield, and you struck out twice on a pitch you'd already scouted, and you took a ball off the collarbone in the second, and didn't tell anybody, which was brave and also stupid because the guy behind you can't call time if he doesn't know." Marcus stared at her. "You watched," he said. "I said I would." "Nobody watches the catcher." "I'm told the catcher watches everybody," Evelyn Carter said. "Somebody's got to return the favor." Marcus Brooks looked down at his shin guard for a second. Then he handed it to her, just held it out sideways without looking the way you hand something to a person who's standing there, and she took it and held it and stood at the fence while he did the other one. Daniel watched all of it from 30 feet away with his hand over his mouth. She called her brother on a Sunday in October 14 months later. She did it from the porch of a rented house in Peoria that she had driven 3 hours to sit outside of because she had decided somewhere around Bloomington that a phone call from a kitchen in Chicago was still a way of controlling who got to make the decision. Daniel waited in the car with Marcus, who was 11 now, and had opinions about the radio. "Is she going to be okay?" "I don't know." "That's your answer for everything." "It's the answer that's true," Daniel said. "Watch the door." Evelyn knocked. A man in a bear's sweatshirt opened it and stood there, and neither of them said anything for what Daniel counted as 11 full seconds. Then Michael Carter said, "You look like Dad." And Evelyn Carter, 42 years old, who had faced down a board and a client and a man with a pill in his pocket, without her voice shaking, once sat down on her brother's front step and cried in front of a screen door. They stayed 4 hours. Michael had 2 kids, 9 and 13, who had been told they had an aunt in Chicago and had never once been told why they'd never met her. His wife's name was Dana, and she made a pot roast without being asked and set 2 extra places without asking about that either. At the table, Michael said, 6 years. "I know. You didn't call." "No. I didn't either," he said. "I want that on the record." "It's on the record. I wrote you a letter in 2021. Evelyn set down her fork. "You never sent it." "It's in a drawer in the garage." Michael shrugged. "You want it?" "Yes." "It's not good." "I don't care." He got it. It was 2 pages, and it was not good, and she read it at the table with everyone watching. And when she got to the part where her brother had written, "I'm not mad that you paid for it. I'm mad that you didn't need me to help," she put her hand flat on the paper and left it there. In the car on the way home in the dark on I-55, Marcus fell asleep against the window, and Evelyn said quietly, "I lost 6 years because I said one sentence at a reception." "You did. You're not going to soften that." "No," Daniel said, "but you drove 3 hours to sit on a step and you got them back. Both things are yours. Take both." They were married in April at the courthouse on a Tuesday with 11 people. Ray Delgado wore a suit that had last been worn to his nephew's Navy graduation and cried harder than anyone in the building, which he denied for the rest of his life. Priya Raghunathan signed as a witness. Mrs. Alvarez, 73 by then, brought a folding chair because she did not trust courthouse seating and was proven correct. Colleen Ashby came in a badge lanyard. She'd forgotten to take off straight from a shift at Northwestern Memorial and stood at the back. Evelyn saw her before the judge said anything and walked the whole length of the room to get her and put her in the second row. "Evelyn, I don't belong up." "Colleen." Evelyn took her by the elbow. You went to Cleveland. Marcus was 11 and stood next to his father in a tie he'd tied himself badly on purpose because Daniel had offered to fix it, and he'd said, "No, it's mine." There were no speeches. Evelyn had written one and left it in her bag because when the moment came, what she said instead was, "I spent 20 years being the strongest person in every room I walked into, and it never once occurred to me to ask what it was for. It was for this. I just got here late." And Daniel said, "You got here." That was the whole ceremony. The company was different by then in ways that people who worked there could feel and couldn't quite name. There was a rule now that any executive who had been at Carter Meridian more than 5 years had to take 4 consecutive weeks off, and that during those 4 weeks, their email was not forwarded to anyone. It was simply answered by an autoresponder that said, "She's out. It's not an emergency. If it is, here's who's covering." Evelyn had gone first because she knew nobody would believe it otherwise, and she had lasted 9 days before Priya changed her password, and 11 more before she stopped talking about it. There was a rule that no client event served alcohol after 9 o'clock, and that a member of staff was assigned to stay until the last employee left the room. Nobody ever asked why. Priya knew, and Daniel knew, and Yolanda Reyes at the Ellsworth knew, and that was all. And the paperwork on Meridian Public showed in the 3rd year that Ann Boyer had retired and been replaced by a man named Daniel Brooks, who had been hired 11 months before the CEO of the parent company ever went on a date with him, and who had a signed record of that order in a file, and who had never once in 4 years taken a meeting where his wife's name would have helped. He turned down a commercial side vice presidency twice. The second time, Evelyn found out from Priya and confronted him in their kitchen. "You didn't tell me." "No." "Daniel, it's $400,000. "I know what it is." "Ann offered it because you're good." "Ann didn't offer it. The commercial side offered it." He kept drying the pan. "And on the day I take a job on the commercial side, I work for you. Not directly. Doesn't matter. Somebody draws the org chart on a whiteboard, and there's a line from my name to yours, and it doesn't go through anybody." He set the pan down. "And then that's what we are, forever, for $400,000. Evelyn stood in her own kitchen with her arms folded. "I hate that you're right." "You don't. You love that I'm right. It's the thing you like most about me, and it's the thing you complain about most, and those are the same thing." "Don't be smug. I've been told." Marcus, 14 and enormous by then, walked through, took an apple, and said without stopping, "They've been doing this for like an hour," and kept going. He grew up. "That's the part nobody warns you about," Daniel would say later. Not the crisis, not the hotel bar, not the newsletter caption that 4,000 people read and forgot in a week. The thing that actually happens is that the kid who unbuckled his shin guards very slowly at the fence turns 15 and then 17 and stops needing rides and gets a voice like a stranger's on the phone. Marcus never called her mom, not once in 11 years exactly as negotiated over a frozen pizza when he was 9. He called her Ev. He started it at 12 and he never explained it, and the first time he did it, Evelyn Carter had to leave the room and stand in a hallway for a minute. When he was 17, he tore his labrum in the second game of his senior season, and the college that had been calling stopped calling, and he came home and went into his room and did not come out for a day and a half. Daniel went in twice and got nothing. Evelyn went in on the second night and sat on the floor with her back against his bed frame, the way she had sat on her own kitchen floor once, and said nothing at all for a long time. "You're going to say something," Marcus said finally from the bed. "Everybody's saying stuff. I'm going to say one thing and then I'm going to leave." "Great." "I got everything I wanted by the time I was 38, Evelyn said. "Everything on the list. All of it. And I want you to know that it did not make me happy for even one day, and I only found out what did at 41 in a 2-bedroom in Portage Park from a 9-year-old with a coffee mug." She stood up. "So the list was wrong, that's all. The list is wrong for everybody, and most people find out at 60. You're finding out at 17, and it's going to feel like losing, and it is not." He didn't answer. She got to the door. "Ev." "Yeah." "Stay a minute," Marcus said. She stayed 2 hours. Daniel found her there at 1 in the morning, asleep, sitting up against the bed frame with her shoes still on, and stood in the doorway of his son's room for a long time without waking either of them. Frank Carter's name went on the building in the 9th year. Not the whole building. The Meridian Public Office had moved by then into 3 floors on Wells Street, and the community space on the ground floor, the one the hospital systems and the school districts used for free, got a plaque by the door. It said, "The Frank Carter Room. It's the same job. You get there before everybody else, and you take whatever gets thrown at you. Nobody who walked through it understood the plaque. 4 people alive did. That was Evelyn said exactly the right number. She was 51 the night she told the story out loud for the first time. It was a leadership conference in Denver, 400 people, and she had a prepared talk about scaling operations, and she got 8 minutes into it and stopped. "I'm going to do something else," she said. "I apologize to the organizers." And she told them about a hotel bar, all of it. The date, the drinks, the man, the pill on the marble, the bartender with the rag, the night manager who wrote the time on a form. She told them she'd been drunk, and she used that word on purpose twice, and she said she'd spent 20 years believing that admitting she was tired was the same thing as admitting she was weak, and that this belief had almost cost her a company, her health, her brother, and her life. Nobody in the room moved. "I didn't come forward at the time," she said. "I want to be honest about that because there are women in this room who are calculating right now the way I calculated. I decided the headline would say drunk, and I was probably right. I still have the tape. It's in a safe. It's been in a safe for 10 years, and every year I pay to keep it there." She looked out at 400 people. "And I'm telling you now because I finally understand what I actually got saved from that night, and it wasn't the drink. It was the 20 years I was about to keep doing. A man on the 8th floor of my own company grabbed a stranger's wrist for me, and then he did something much harder. He took me home and didn't touch me and asked for nothing, and when I woke up he handed me coffee made by a 9-year-old and treated me like a person instead of a story." She had to stop for a second. "That's the whole thing," Evelyn Carter said. "You will be saved if you're lucky by somebody with no power whatsoever who has nothing to gain on an ordinary night when they could just as easily have gone home, and the only way to deserve it is to be that person for somebody else." 11 people came up to her afterward. 9 of them were women. 2 of them cried. One of them, a 34-year-old regional director from Omaha, said, "It happened to me in 2019, and I've never said it to anybody." And Evelyn Carter sat with her in a hotel lobby in Denver until 2 in the morning and missed her flight. Daniel picked her up at O'Hare the next afternoon in a car that was not a 14-year-old Honda anymore, though he'd kept it for 6 years past reason and had eventually sold it to Ray Delgado's nephew for $1. "How was it?" "I told them," she said, getting in. He looked at her. "All of it. All of it." Daniel Brooks sat with both hands on the wheel in the arrivals lane at O'Hare and didn't say anything for a moment. "Frank Carter's kid," he said. "Don't. Bakery truck, 31 years. Daniel. Now there's 400 of us who know it," he said. She reached over and took his hand off the gear shift and held it, and they sat there until a traffic officer made them move. They were old by the end the way people get, which is to say they were 61 and 58, and had a granddaughter named Frances, who could not say either of their names correctly, and called Evelyn Nev, which stuck permanently the way these things do. Marcus became a high school athletic director in Rogers Park. He was good at it. He was the guy who noticed the kid nobody was noticing, which surprised absolutely no one who had ever met his father. At his wedding, he gave a toast that was mostly a joke about shin guards, and then he stopped in the middle of it and looked at the second table and said, "When I was 9, my dad asked me for permission. I want everybody to hear that. He had the whole rest of his life sitting in front of him, and he asked a 4th grader, and he'd have taken no for an answer, and I've never met another man who would have done that." And then he raised his glass toward the second table and said, "And Ev, you stayed the whole game, even when we were losing. You said you would, and you did, and you've done it for 22 years. Evelyn Carter, who had built a multi-million-dollar company out of an office above a shoe repair shop, who had been on the cover of a magazine, and 11 panels about leadership, put her napkin over her face at her stepson's wedding and did not recover for some time. Because here is what she had learned and what she said out loud exactly once, late one night in a kitchen in Portage Park, that they never did move out of. Success will get you every single thing you ever asked for, and it will not get you one person who stays in the room when you're tired. That has to be given. It has to be given freely by somebody who wants nothing on an ordinary night when they could have gone home instead. Daniel Brooks went home that night in November and carried a woman up 2 flights of stairs and slept in a chair with his shoes on and asked for nothing and got everything. That is the whole story, and it is true, and it began the moment one man decided that being decent when no one was watching was not a small thing at all.